So here's the deal. This story is about a guy who decided to make a seedy sect the most powerful in just 100 years. Nothing could be easier or more fun, he thought. But things don't start out the way he planned. He cheerfully invited him to join them. The poor fellow was lying on the ground at this time. The leader's foot stood on the lad's cheek and prevented him from escaping. The young man asked to let him go. The sect head smirked faintly and retracted his foot. He explained that he couldn't help himself when he saw the boy and his student together. Jun Changxiao apologized for his rude actions and lifted the fighter by the scruff of the neck with one tug, studying him closely. He asked me to think again about joining the sect. Shivering with fear, the boy said that he was already a member of the Spring Water sect. The clan leader sighed heavily and defiantly pushed the young man aside. He was sorry he couldn't get a new warrior. Turning to his female disciple Lu Changqian, who was sitting on a tree branch, the head asked if the type had harassed her. The first follower shifted the sword in her hand. Raising her gray eyes, she said thoughtfully as the boy tried to touch her hand. Jun Changxiao had had enough of this. He grabbed the boy and kicked him in the chin. The young man shouted that he didn't do that. The head smiled gloatingly and said that his student never lies. He kicked his victim in the face with his foot once more. The impact made the boy's back sag. Leaving the young man moaning on the ground, the master and his apprentice walked forward in a sedate manner. She asked why the blows were only to the face. Many years ago, Wang, a fighter, jumped off a cliff and survived. He founded a sect for people with an iron spirit who lead a righteous life. The man worked on the cult for over a decade. Unfortunately, he was later imprisoned for having fun in brothels. Wang tried to escape, but the escape attempt was prevented in time. He was caught and executed by beheading. Thus, a person claiming to be Master Jun Changxiao became the leader of the Iron Bone sect. The real Jun Changxiao died 3 days after Wang's death. A huge stone tablet fell and crushed his spine. When the young man took over the master's body and learned what kind of death his former master had died, he simply had no words. But then he got a taste for it and promised himself that he would rule the world like the other time travelers. In the midst of his reverie, the young man heard a strange sound. The system activated right in front of his eyes. His hair stood on end in astonishment. Jun Changxiao looked over the brief information on the sect. Right now, there was only one person in it out of 100 possible people. The head learned that he had to make the sect the strongest in 100 years, or else his soul would be destroyed after the deadline. After each paragraph I read, an incredible pain was felt in my body as if a spear had been driven into it. Jun Changxiao smiled and closed his eyes. He had finally realized everything. This entire system was just a figment of his imagination. The man remembered that all the troubles started when the owner of the body was nailed with a plaque. He decided to repeat the experiment to make his brain work normally. Immediately after the blow to the head, the system activated and reported the accrual of the gift. The head rejoiced. He knew he was on the right path. A stream of energy enveloped the man's hand. The system notified that an artifact called the interdimensional ring had been received. Jun Changxiao stared thoughtfully at the golden bracelet that would fit even 2 hands. His cries for a giant ring echoed throughout the complex. Trying not to fall off the chair, the sect leader hung the heavy plaque in place. The man thought glumly that the system's task was very difficult. Plus he got a weird giant ring, though in cases like this the protagonist should get combat experience or strength. Jun Changxiao thoughtfully placed the bracelet on his forehead, trying to figure out what to do with it. His body was enveloped in streams of energy. The young man rejoiced. Judging by the feeling, the system wanted to provide him with an unusual gift. To the boy's surprise, in a few seconds it was all over. In his hands was the most ordinary brick. Jun Changxiao almost cried out in frustration. It would have been better to be given a few skills or a mythical beast egg. Suddenly, the young man realized that this brick was not quite ordinary. There was something inside it, and he could clearly hear a sound like a heartbeat. The man rejoiced. Most likely some master of ancient arts is hidden inside. He would teach the boy all the skills. Jun Changxiao brought the brick closer to his eyes. He was already ready to kiss the magical object for the gift of fate. Meanwhile, an inscription appeared on the brick. The young man realized with horror that the countdown from 100 years had begun. The man angrily threw the brick to the ground and screamed that he had been dastardly deceived. The artifact was actually a bomb. After hitting the ground, 1 hour of countdown was missing. Jun Changxiao shouted that even the timer on this brick was set incorrectly. Turns out the bomb has a soul of its own. If you upset it, the countdown accelerates. The young man immediately fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness. The system reported that the mission could not be cancelled. The man felt completely helpless. He wanted to kill himself. At this moment, a large sword with a black and gold hilt appeared right in the air. The system notified the delivery of the Sword of Destruction. It stabbed into the ground right in front of the boy. The boy crawled away, startled, the weapon almost hitting him. After learning that the sword was meant to commit suicide, Jun Changxiao sighed heavily. The stupid system had gotten it all wrong. He called up the system interface, hoping to learn something new about his assignment. The structure of the sect was of particular interest. Apparently, all the most interesting things started when the sect reached level 5. Now the level of the structure was at the first. The man sat down on the temple steps and began to question the system on how to level up and what the value of the sect's contribution was. After a short conversation, the young man realized that the value of the contribution was linked to the sect's store. In order to open it, it was necessary to attract followers. Now it was clear. The strongest sect was the one with the most followers. The boy decided to look into it tomorrow. Quickly constructing a plywood board, Jun Changxiao wrote a call to join the sect on it. He was confident that he could recruit the first 100 disciples in 3 days. To his surprise, no one showed up even after a month and a half. In that time, the doors to the complex had grown cobwebs. The young man's enthusiasm was fading with each passing day. He saw that it was difficult to realize his plan. He had no appetite and had to eat noodles. It was at that moment that a girl in light-colored clothes appeared in front of the temple and declared her intention to join the sect. Jun Changxiao almost choked at the sudden appearance of a potential sect member. He noisily sucked in the remaining noodles. The man looked admiringly at the gray-eyed beauty. He introduced himself as the sect leader and solemnly announced that he was pleased to welcome her. Lu Qiangqian glumly announced that she had changed her mind. The young man fell to his knees, begging the girl not to leave. His sect had great potential. After being persuaded, she agreed to become a follower. As a result, the sect's store became available on the system. The assortment of the store offered ancient techniques and artifacts. The leader was very excited and asked to be shown the items available for purchase. Unfortunately, artifacts and abilities could be forgotten about. He could only get a beginner's kit for 1 point of contribution value. The system offered to show this set. The young man grudgingly agreed and received several spells, which are placed in an interdimensional ring. The man put on the bracelet and asked to be shown the capabilities. 5 colored holograms with information about spells appeared in front of him. The image with red letters was an experienced spell and accelerated cultivation. The young man grabbed it and crushed it between his palms. Immediately after that, he felt that he was getting stronger and stronger. Jun Changxiao went through the stages of development very quickly. It turned out that all the stages of the initial stage meant nothing. He was still at the lowest stage. Even to the apprentice level was far away. The young man pretended not to be too embarrassed and wondered why the seal-opening spell was needed. It turned out that this spell was needed to open the Sword of Destruction. The guy got angry and tossed the hologram aside. After learning from the system that Qinyan City was recruiting followers, Jun Changxiao traveled there with his female disciple. Suddenly, 5 strangers in dark robes appeared in their path. After a few somersaults, the fighters landed in front of the leader. While the guy and girl were trying to figure out what was going on, the young man beaten by the leader shouted to his fellow man that this was the guy. Lu Qiangqian wondered in surprise who the man was. The head whispered in the girl's ear that it was the guy he had beaten up. Li frowned and asked the man to introduce himself. No one dares to beat up the followers of the Springwater sect with impunity. The young man smiled and proudly said his name is Jun Changxiao. He is the leader of the Iron Bone sect. The man turned to his companions in surprise. He had heard that the sect leader had been executed for visiting brothels and escaping from prison, and the clan had broken up. Lu Qiangqian asked the head of the brothels with surprise. The young man pretended not to hear the interlocutor. Li said that a talentless leader has no right to touch their follower. Jun Changxiao asked the girl to step back. He was about to slap them. The apprentice obediently stepped aside and asked for the position of clan leader to be handed over to her before he died. The young man couldn't believe it. He had only 1 follower in all his time, but even she was vying for his place. The confident leader proudly straightened up and demanded that the system activate his skills. 3 circles of fire appeared on his wrist. His opponents were puzzled. A school leader should at least be a student, but this type clearly didn't reach that level. Li stepped forward and promised to spare the young man and forget what he had done if he would fall to his knees now and beg for mercy. Lu Qiangqian realized that the opponents are stronger. They are at least at the 4th step of opening acupuncture points. The suggestion of begging for mercy made the leader very angry. He threw himself at Li with a lightning leap, pushing his face away. The man fell to the ground. Jun Changxiao victoriously asked why he would kneel before his enemies. The members of the faction watched cautiously as events unfolded. It was clear that this leader was not as simple as he seemed. Li indignantly asked how a level 3 master could have such strength. At this moment, a new task appeared. The system suggested to deal with the enemies. The sect leader lifted his opponent's head and slammed it to the ground. The task was updated, and there were only 3 opponents left. The angry companions rushed to attack to avenge their boss. The young man smirked and said it was too easy. A second later, the defeated enemies trembled in fear. They found out that Jun Changxiao was actually at the 5th level. A moment later, the opponents groaned on the ground. Carelessly waving goodbye to his enemies, the sect leader called out to Lu Qianqian. The girl was reprimanding the head of the clan along the way. She stated that the man should have killed his enemies. He replied that there was no need to be cruel. The follower informed him that the starland they were in was more dangerous than the jungle. If he doesn't realize that, he doesn't need to be a cult leader. Jun Changxiao analyzed the girl's words and thought that she was right. This world only honored martial arts and jungle rules. The system provided a new side mission. He needs to change Lu Chengqian's mind and protect his dignity as the sect leader. The young man thought it made sense. Even though there were only 2 of them in the sect at the moment, it was necessary to show at once who was in charge. He turned to the girl and said he agreed with her. They cannot show mercy to their enemies. The guy said that their sect strives for truth and purity. If he killed the weak disciples, it would damage the sect's reputation. The student thought about the leader's words and said that she now understood him. The system credited the reward for completing the task. Lu Chengqian drew her sword from its sheath and said that killing those worthless people would affect his reputation, so she would do everything herself. The young man explained that every girl should be elegant. The girl frowned and made a lunge with her sword toward the leader. She said she would do his bidding as a cult leader, but strongly discouraged looking down on women. Jun Changxiao gently took the edge of the blade with 2 fingers and slowly took it aside. He realized that the girl had been through a lot. Without waiting for a moment to be left to himself, the young man called up the system store menu and looked up the prices of artifacts. To Lu Chengqian, he just looked like a foolish young man walking along the forest path and wiggling his fingers in different directions. Jun Changxiao didn't notice his companion's strange looks. He was more embarrassed by the fact that he couldn't buy anything at the store. 1 point could only buy a small healing pill. The young man told himself that he would buy it if he were dying. The girl was walking alertly, and so she immediately noticed some noise nearby. She drew her sword and asked him to be careful. Hoping it wasn't a wild animal, the leader told his companion that the forest looked rather muddy and dangerous. They'd better find another road. After walking a few meters forward, Lu Qianqian raised her sword up and said, "It doesn't look like a wild beast. There's a human in there." There was indeed a man behind the bushes. Badly injured, he sat down under a tree. His clothes were missing large scraps of cloth. The young man moved closer and checked the injured man's pulse. It looked like he didn't have long to live. There were multiple bloody streaks on the guy's back. Jun Changxiao assumed that the stranger had come across a wild beast. Lu Chengqian hurried the boy. They should go as soon as possible. If the beast caught them in the night, they would suffer the same fate. The man can't be helped anyway. He could die any second, especially since they're both non-medical. The young man smiled faintly and stated that he was not trained in medicine, but he had a miracle pill. Buying a pill from the system store, the leader scrutinized it carefully, then put it into the dying stranger's mouth. The girl sighed and instructively said that the warrior had many wounds. 1 pill would not improve his health. Suddenly she heard a cough. The mortally wounded guy started to lift himself off the ground. Jun Changxiao smiled and asked his disciple what she would say now. Lu Chengqian stated that it was simply impossible. The guy was almost dying from injuries, and now he was almost jumping. The leader seemed more mysterious to her now. She'd noticed that gloating expression on his face during the conversation. There was a reason for that. The leader was anticipating a quick fortune. Such a pill should be very expensive, but it costs less than any commodity. Jun Changxiao saw himself already wearing expensive clothes and gold. He decided to buy pills with all the money he had and sell them more expensively. Unfortunately, the young man was bitterly disappointed. There was a limit on this pill. The player could only buy 1 pill per month. Besides, it turned out that the stranger he had rescued had also just run away. The guy couldn't believe that he wasn't even thanked. Lu Chengqian took it up again. She said that good guys don't achieve anything here, so it's better to be bad. The leader exclaimed irritably that there must be at least 1 person in this world who acts according to conscience. The girl raised her eyebrows in surprise. In her opinion, some people in this world don't know what conscience is at all. Jun Changxiao was dissatisfied. He had hoped to save this guy and invite him into his sect. But it didn't work out. The young man remembered that there were no laws or moral restrictions in this world. Anyone could humiliate him, or just run away after being rescued. He decided from that moment on to take up the challenge and live in Starland the way the rest of us live here, by the rules of the jungle. At that moment, the system notified a secret mission that involved understanding the rules of Starland. The guy remembered that all the tasks assigned by the sect's higher system could be divided into main, side, and secret. Of course, there are other assignments. He recently had the epic task of slaying the legendary blood dragon. The leader became very excited. The type of task implied that the reward for it would be very generous. Unfortunately, it was impossible to fulfill it right now. It was necessary to obtain a certain level of development. Anyway, for the last secret mission, the young man got 10 contribution points and could buy something from the store. Suddenly, his companion tore him away from his grand plans by tapping the hilt of her sword right on his forehead. She reported his arrival in Qingyang City. There really was a lot to see here. Jun Changxiao decided that his sect would definitely look more majestic than this city. The guy's enthusiastic exclamations attracted the attention of many random passers-by. One of them scornfully said that he was a disciple of the Iron Bone sect. The young man angrily declared that he was not a disciple, but the second leader of this sect. There was silence in the square for a moment. Suddenly, everyone exploded with laughter, holding their bellies. Absolutely everyone was laughing at him. One guy exclaimed that the sect was long gone. Some young man and girl were almost crying with laughter. Given his low level, they could have started a sect themselves. Jun Changxiao heard all these remarks perfectly. He pretended not to pay attention, but he was very painfully worried. Each of the insults was a heavy spear thrown at his back. Unfortunately, the boy could not answer. The young man couldn't stand it and roared, sitting down right on the road. He has no skills, no artifacts, nothing but a time mine. Lu Qianqian gently placed her hand on the leader's shoulder. He enthusiastically declared that at least the girl stayed with him. At the same second, his companion motioned him with her fist and said scathingly that he should be ashamed. The young man was a little taken aback by her harshness. He got up from the ground and replied that he'd been through more than that, so he wasn't hurt by other people's criticism. The man offered his companion to go to the pledge recruitment ceremony. The girl asked how he tolerated the mockery of himself. Jun Changxiao didn't bother to explain anything. He knew that his companion wouldn't understand anyway. Such people could only be silenced by brute force. In a few minutes they came to a wide square with rows of pavilions. In each of them were representatives of different sects. Looking at the great Sheng sect's pavilion, the guy remembered that he had done various tasks for the system in the past. But now the situation has changed. It is a different time. Starland would soon feel the force of his swift and powerful attacks. In one of the tents, an apprentice was fervently proving to his master that they would definitely be able to recruit a newcomer with great potential this time. The sword-wielding man standing beside them laughed unpleasantly. The sects here are all level 8 sects, so it would be hard to get a newcomer. He turned his face with a scar across his eye and declared that the Broad Sword sect would come out on top this year. The deacon got angry and rolled up his sleeves. He told his opponent that he would see whose sect would gain the most followers. At that moment, some stranger with a portable tent in the shape of a large umbrella wedged himself between the tents. He put up his banner. A man from the Broadsword sect shouted that he had no right to sit there. His disciple timidly said that the Iron Bone sect was part of the alliance. The man smirked gloatingly and said that the place belonged to the Broadsword sect. The two of them had better look for another place. Jun Changxiao didn't even move. He reminded that they were all members of the alliance. There was no need to be angry with each other. The deacon came out of the tent and stated that he previously had nothing against the Iron Bone sect as long as leader Wang was alive. But now he considers it a disgrace to himself that such a sect is recruiting new members in the neighborhood of his pavilion. The young man replied that he would expand his sect, and no bald men could stop him. The masters of both tents tensed, their eyes blazing with hatred. They began to argue that there was nothing wrong with baldness. At their call, the disciples came running, ready to tear down the enemy's tent. Jun Changxiao rejoiced. With a little showdown, he would be able to promote his sect and gain disciples. Suddenly, someone shouted that Li Qingcheng was coming. The deacon from the Lion Roar sect demanded that all the disciples come over to him. With his ears perked up, the young man overheard that this guy is the direct heir of the Li family. Everyone is out to get the young master. In addition, young Li had a supreme spiritual development route. In the city, even the middle level was rare. After carefully analyzing the situation, The guy realized that he had the lowest level of development. He told his companion that Li was a real genius. Now he had one idea to get the master to join their sect. As Li Qingchang walked through the square, all the pavilions were empty. Their representatives were begging to join their sect. A man in white clothes with gold jewelry walked proudly down the center, ignoring absolutely every suggestion. The thoughtful face of a guy with blue hair and elements of gold jewelry on his white clothes seemed familiar to the leader. He asked his follower if they could have met this man somewhere before. Lu Chengqian recalled that this was the same crippled man who had escaped from them in the forest. The young man smiled. He was not mistaken. At that time, a green-clothed elder came out to meet Li. He invited the young man to join the Kangshan Mountain sect. This sect was 5th in the rankings and had its own centuries-old temple. None of the other recruiters had a chance to get the guy. Jun Changxiao sighed heavily. He could barely restrain himself from screaming. All hope was only for Li to join his sect because of the healing. Suddenly, the young man saw Li Qingchang stop in front of him and bowed. The man asked if the guy was really the head of the Iron Bone sect. All the recruiters were stunned. They all offered the best terms, and Li went to some lowlife. Jun Changxiao felt his superiority over the other challengers and sat back down. The young man smiled and replied that it was him. The representatives of the Broadsword sect and Lion Roar sect stared dumbfoundedly at what was happening, unable to believe their eyes. The legend of Qingyang City easily chats with that snooty guy who sits on a chair and doesn't even think of getting up. Li Qingyang admitted that he had run away from the forest that day. He didn't have time to apologize, so he apologizes now. Jun Changxiao smiled and politely wrapped his arms around Mr. Li's brush. He said that there was no need to worry about it. After all, he had already forgotten himself until Li reminded him. Lu Qianqian frowned, thinking that this was all the leader had been talking about a few minutes ago. The young man smiled welcomingly and asked for more details about the history of the origin of their powerful sect. Immediately, a side task from the system was activated. One had to convince Mr. Li to join the sect. Both of Jun Changxiao's neighbors simultaneously shouted that the Iron Bone sect had no great history. The deacon exclaimed that the sect's greatest merit concerns their leader Wang. He had helped stop the distribution of pornography. The leader of the Lion Roar sect wailed that the sect itself was worthless. He could swear on the rest of his hair. The young man gave his opponents a look that made their blood run cold. He said that this was only the part that was known to everyone. In fact, the Iron Bone sect has a centuries-old history. It has its own temple complex of buildings. Li Qingcheng asked for more details. The representatives of the other sects frowned at the young man, unable to understand why he believed the trickster. Jun Changxiao asked the man if he had heard of the East Sea. Li surprisingly replied that the sea was in the east of Star Country. The leader continued the story. At the edge of the Eastern Sea there is a country called Dolai with 2 mountains. One of them is called Ironbone Mountain. It was there that their oldest sect originated. Their first leader was Sun Wukong, whom everyone knew as the Monkey King. The young man's story was so convincing that many casual passers-by believed him. Only an elder of the Kangshan Mountain sect cried out that it was a lie. He said that the East Sea is very dangerous. Especially Dolai State is not mentioned by explorers. No one has heard of the Iron Bone Mountain. Jun Changxiao turned to the elder and stated that in that case, he knew absolutely nothing about Star Country. The old man became enraged and demanded an explanation of where the Sun Wukong he was telling about had come from and who was his master. The young man told that the first sect leader was born from the Divine Stone after 1,000 years of incubation. His master was Subhiti of Mount Linthai. The elder became even more angry and said that all men are made of flesh and blood. No one will believe these silly stories. Jun Changxiao faintly smiled and said that a man really just couldn't possibly know absolutely everything about the evolution of creatures. The old man's eye began to twitch with anger. He shouted that he wasn't as dumb as the boy wanted him to be, and he wouldn't believe such nonsense. It was as if Mr. Li didn't hear the old man. He smiled and said that he was glad to hear the long history of the Iron Bone sect, but he wanted to know more about the current state of the sect and what he could accomplish if he agreed to join. The elder almost cried with happiness. It was the right question. Of course, this sect couldn't provide any benefits. The sect leader humbly replied that all powerful sects die out one day. His sect was no exception. He smiled and added that the Iron Bone sect was time-tested. After losing its former glory, it had left a solid foundation. And that pill is the best proof. Li Qingyang couldn't argue with that. He remembered how he had almost died. Besides, a man of such great value gave such a huge amount of money to a chance encounter. He could very well be telling the truth. Jun Changxiao said that he wanted to resurrect his sect and needed a master of the level of Li Qingyang. He can't promise much. However, only the Iron Bone sect would guarantee advancement to the very pinnacle of martial arts if a young man joined. The elder blushed red, trying to shout over the recruiter. He shouted that a sect leader couldn't make such a promise. In Star Country, a martial arts emperor is at the highest level of cultivation. He is worshipped as a god. The old man almost choked when he heard that the young gentleman, despite all exhortations, had given his consent. The contract was immediately signed and sealed with a prearranged seal with a red star in a circle. This was how the sect leader completed the side mission. The elder still couldn't calm down and tried to convince Li Qingyang to give up. After all, he would ruin his potential in such a sect. The sect leader softly said that the Iron Bone sect would surpass all others in 3 years. The old man would still remember this conversation. The elder turned black with anger. If it wasn't for young Li, he would have torn his friend apart. The man shouted that words alone would not do anything. He promised to clear things up a bit and explain to the arrogant young man the vast gulf between them. Li Qingyang frowned and softly asked Elder Ma not to disrespect his sect leader anymore. The old man realized that all was lost and walked closer to Jun Changxiao. He said that he would look at the development of his sect. A tall man with a black mustache approached the friends with quick steps and asked the elder to take his time. The entire job fair simultaneously ayed. The man wearing dark clothes and gold-embroidered ribbons was Master Li. He bowed politely to the Kangshan Mountain sect elder and promised that he would accept an invitation to his sect on behalf of his son. Li Qingyang angrily exclaimed that he had already made a decision to join the Iron Bone sect and would not back down from it. Master Li angrily said that his choice today would not only affect Qingyang himself, but also the future of their entire family. The young man recalled that his father had always taught him to be honest. He had joined the Iron Bone sect and was not going to take it back. The man lost control of himself and declared in public that he would give up his son if he did not leave the cult immediately. His shout caused Master Li to cough violently. The man accompanying him anxiously picked up the master. He excitedly reminded the young man that his father was already in his old age and also asked him to come out of the wretched sect. Elder Ma took advantage of the moment and said that one should not forget about piety. It is not very noble to act against father's will. Li Qingyang was in an awkward position. He himself saw that things had gone too far and couldn't afford to embarrass the family. Seeing his hesitation, Jun Changxiao put his hand on his shoulder and smiled. He promised that they would achieve dizzying success together. Master Li turned black with anger. He was very unhappy that his son had joined the sect and believed the silly stories. He stepped closer to the guy and suggested that the sect leader clearly had incredible knowledge of martial arts. Barely restraining himself, the man jabbed a finger in his direction and said that Mr. Jun was acting very confident. The young man smiled and said that he knew more about the arts than everyone gathered here combined. Lu Qianqian thought that this time he had really screwed up. Master Li began to lose his patience. He took out a small book from his pocket and asked for advice in such a case. He said that Qingyang City has had a sword technique for 100 years. None of the masters had been able to master the 9th style. The man made a demand. If Jun Changxiao didn't master the last step of mastery, he would expel his son from his sect. The young man smiled and replied that it wouldn't be a difficulty. He realized that Master Li had chosen a win-win situation. The sect leader opened the system store menu and activated an hour-long illumination spell. It allowed him to learn the combat skills and secret techniques of his opponents. After activating the illumination spell, Jun Changxiao began feverishly flipping through the stapled book handed to him. Everyone around him was watching him with interest. Even Lu Qianqian and Li Qingqiang couldn't understand why he was turning the pages so quickly. The Lion's Roar sect leader said incredulously that the kid wouldn't learn anything that way if he just turned the pages. Hearing the talk about himself, the Ironbone sect's sect leader faintly smiled and explained that he was using the quantum fluctuation method. In fact, the young man saw the book differently than the others. The red images of the fighters in the brochure looked to him like a training video. After finishing reading the guidelines, Jun Changxiao defiantly slammed the book between his palms. He turned to the girl and asked for her sword for a while. Lu Qianqian handed over the blade with surprise. The sect leader drew his sword from its sheath and quickly made a circular motion. The air current shattered the paving stones in the square, sending small shards of stone flying. Elder Ma knew perfectly well what it meant and was very surprised. This guy only took a minute to learn the first style from the book. Meanwhile, the young man continued onward. He waved his sword a few times and visualized the second style. Now it was Mr. Li's turn to be surprised. In his time, he had to spend 5 days to learn the second style. The guy made several lightning-fast movements. From the outside, it seemed as if 3 swords were cutting through the air at the same time. The powerful energy release caused the surface to collapse more and more. The blast wave blew the guy's recent opponents backwards. Despite the effect produced, Jun Changxiao was dissatisfied. In his opinion, this technique could be used even faster. Demonstrating the 8th style, the sect leader made unimaginable movements in the air and quickly spiraled downwards, producing another explosion. Elder Ma stated to the surprised Mr. Lee that it was impossible to learn the 9 styles in such a time. He had clearly done it before. The guy's speed is unbelievable. In a minute and a half, he portrayed all 8 styles now known. The elder inquired why Jun had stopped, and asked if he had studied the 9 styles of ancient techniques before. The young man didn't answer anything. He just stood in the center of the square. Energy was emanating from his body, and all the fighters could feel it. Li Qingqiang was the first person present to determine the guy's strength. Apparently, he was able to reach the sword realm, the highest stage. Following young Master Li, all the other warriors murmured and began to vigorously discuss the fellow with martial skills. Elder Ma asked for silence. He explained that it was very rare to be able to grasp the secret of the sword realm. There was no need to disturb the young man. Suddenly, he heard Jun Changxiao asking for help to test his strength, and perplexedly turned to the young man. The Iron Bone sect leader said that only an elder here could handle a couple of his attacks and smiled. With a lightning-fast lunge forward, the young master created a strong energy flow, destroying everything in its path. Elder Ma carefully watched the energy wave that was rapidly approaching him. He put his hands out in front of him at the last moment and blocked the flow from advancing further, marveling at the young man's strength. The elder tensed up and broke the energy pulse, spreading his arms apart with force. After taking a closer look at his opponent, the elder realized that Jun Changxiao was clearly new to martial arts. Furthermore, the 5 red marks on his arm clearly said that this warrior only possessed a level 5 martial skill. The sect leader made another quick attack. There was a violent grinding sound. The energy release made a deep ditch in the paving stones, but the elder was able to stop the impact. Mr. Lee suggested that it was a demonstration of the 9th style. Elder Ma rubbed his wrist and admitted that the attack was strong. He rushed to his friend and began to shake him, grabbing him by the shoulders. The old master said that this was not even the limit of the young man's strength. The elder bowed to his opponent and admitted that he admired him. He had managed to master the martial art in 2 minutes. The leader of the Lion Roar sect saw that his tent had been completely trashed and rushed towards it with shrieks. The old man confessed that he had a request. He has been cultivating non-stop all these years, but he has never been able to reach enlightenment, and he needs advice. Both of the young man's recent opponents couldn't believe that he was being asked for advice by the 5th-level sect elder and martial artist himself. Jun Changxiao willingly agreed to give it a try if Elder Ma detailed exactly how he cultivated. This interested the leader of the Lion Roar sect. He tried to eavesdrop on the conversation, but he couldn't make out anything. When the old man heard the advice, he rejoiced. After the boy's words, it was as if he had gained new wisdom, and now he knew what to do. The young man smiled. He suggested that the elder train for a couple months with his advice. After that, he would be able to break through to the next level. The Kaishan sect leader ran off and shouted goodbye, saying that he would ask the guy for some more tips a little later. Seeing how respectfully Elder Ma treated the sect leader, everyone gathered in the square ran for advice, pushing each other away. Jun Changxiao saw that he had only wasted 3 minutes out of an hour. He decided to make money and announced that 1 tip was worth 100 taels. A crowd of eager people nearly swept away his umbrella and sign. Hundreds of hands with money reached out to the young man, each wanting advice. Li Qingqiang assisted the sect leader and handed out a token with a serial number in the queue to those who paid the fee. The eager members of the queue peered forward now and then, trying to determine how long to wait for their advice. As soon as one of them tried to trick the guy into walking forward, Lu Chengqian declared that no one would pass by her. The guy trembled with fear. Meanwhile, the sect leader was approached by a lucrative client. After paying the requisite 500 taels, he received advice on promotion and bowed. After counting the money, the guy called out the next person who wanted to come. Master Li introduced himself. He had a few problems and could use some help. The young man demanded 1,000 taels. Mr. Li turned black with anger. He shouted that everyone only paid 100 taels each. In addition, his son is a member of the Iron Bone sect. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that in that case, he would make a discount. 1 tael would be charged. The sect leader of the Lion Roar sect was surprised. To make sure no one else doubted, the young man raised his head and loudly announced that he was making an exclusive discount for the parents of his sect's disciples. For a few seconds, there was complete silence in the queue. The leader's statement simply stunned everyone who wanted to attend. After a second, the most savvy ones rushed forward, shouting that their children had always dreamed of joining the Iron Bone sect. The sect leader smiled and told his 2 disciples that they wouldn't be bored now. Now the recruitment for the sect would begin. There were too many people wanting to join the sect. The young man was already tired of putting stamps on the standard forms. Unfortunately, there were only half of the talented students. About 40 fighters were of no value. The sect leader remembered the basic background. It seemed uncomplicated. He would soon have the right number. Suddenly, the system reported that the limit of participants had been reached. Jun Changxiao became angry. He couldn't believe that the system only allowed 100 people to be recruited at such a moment. It turned out that in order to expand the sect, you had to send your disciples on missions. The leader collapsed exhausted. New difficulties again. Suddenly, a dark-skinned giant with a neat beard approached the table and claimed that the guy had somehow beaten up his disciples from the Spring Water sect. A deacon from the Lion Roar sect loudly exclaimed that Wei Yingwu himself, an elder of the Spring Water sect, had come to see them. He whispered to his disciple that last year, the master had destroyed his disciple's cultivation and expelled him from the sect. Jun Changxiao asked Li Qingqiang in surprise why many masters were afraid of the Spring Water sect, being a higher level. The young man replied that all the elders from that sect surpassed the other masters by several levels. No one could compete with them. Wei Ying was glad that everything had already been told about him. He suggested that the sect leader destroy his cultivation, and then no one would touch him. The young man explained to the man that his students had molested a female disciple from the Iron Bone sect, and so they received quite deservedly. The elder became enraged and demanded that the guy fight him on the platform of justice. Li Qingqiang whispered that this opponent is very strong. He is at the 12th stage, and therefore the fight is obviously a losing one. Jun Changxiao was overjoyed. He replied that dueling with the head of the Spring Water sect would save them a lot of trouble. The opponents immediately proceeded to the rectangular platform that was located here as well. The spectators were surprised that the guy was so confident. As soon as the opponent attacked the young man, Jun Changxiao ducked down and kicked him in the stomach. The elder bent in half from the intense pain. He attempted a quick counterattack and hit the sect leader in the head from above, pressing him into the arena. Li Qingqian asked Lu Qianqian if their head had time to leave a will in case of his death. Wei Yingwu angrily shouted that he could let the guy go if he did the right thing. But there would be no mercy for him in the arena. The man strained his huge biceps, showing off his steel muscles to the audience. He stated that he devoted a lot of time to physical exercises. The elder demonstrated how he could smash any boulder weighing even a ton without using combat skills. Jun Changxiao had been lazily stubbing his nose with his finger the entire time, and disdainfully said that no one was interested in his conversations. Wei Yingwu realized that it was time to teach the arrogant youngster a lesson once and for all. He swung his solid fist and rushed towards his opponent. The guy was ready for it and activated an energy shield with a bluish glow. The elder was sure it wouldn't save him. To his surprise, the guy's defense was pretty good. Even his powerful fists couldn't penetrate it. Moreover, the man's hand hurt a little after the impact, as if it had encountered a very sturdy obstacle. Jun Changxiao faintly smiled and asked his opponent if they could finally start their duel. Wei Yingwu couldn't believe that the guy hadn't moved even a millimeter. He must have advanced martial skills. The young man smiled faintly and tapped his fingers on the invisible shield. A metallic clang sounded. Jun Changxiao explained that he had used the Golden Bell shield. Li Qingqiang was surprised to ask his interlocutor what this skill was. He had never heard of it, and assumed that the bell had only developed in this sect. Lu Qingqian had already studied the leader quite well, and said that there was a high probability of lies in his words. However, their head has many secrets that ordinary people are unable to unravel. The girl was right. The Golden Bell shield was out of the question, and Changxiao was miraculously alive. The only thing that saved the leader was that he used an anti-damage spell from the new player's set, and thanks to that, he was unharmed. The elder was confident that his strength could not be handled by any skill. He enthusiastically attacked the opponent. Unfortunately, not a single punch was able to overcome the defense. The powerful punches only resulted in Wei Ying's fists shattering to the point of bleeding. The young man only laughed at his opponent and roused him. He assumed that in a little more time the man would be able to wrinkle his clothes. The elder couldn't believe it. There was almost nothing left of the arena, but Jun Changxiao didn't even have a scratch on him. Li Qingqiang also saw such a defense for the first time. He said that with such a combat skill the sect leader was practically invulnerable. The enraged Wei Yingwu wailed that the young man himself had forced him to go to extreme measures and slammed his fists against each other, creating a bright source of light between them. The sect leader said thoughtfully that the elder resembled Hercules from the famous game, and his skills were very similar. Li Qingqiang paid attention to his head's words and began to look closely at Wei Ying, trying to figure out what skill the young man was talking about. Now he remembered and shouted to the boss that this unique martial skill of the Spring Water sect was called the Magnificent Golden Fist. While dodging the blow, Jun Changxiao realized that the leader of the Holy Spring sect was called Minato Namikaze. This name seemed familiar as well. The elder angrily shouted that no one dared to turn away when displaying art and rushed forward to attack, pushing a huge golden shield in front of him. The young man waited patiently until the last moment and then thrust his arm forward. To the man's surprise, the shield shattered. Wei Yinu continued to run at the enemy, realizing with horror that his unique combat skill had no effect. Li Qingqiang's jaw dropped down in surprise. The girl frowned, saying that the sect leader really has a lot of trump cards. The deacon couldn't believe that this golden bell shield was the most ordinary skill. In that case, the guy was very strong. The young man smiled and suggested that Wei Ying show the rest of his martial skills if he had any trump cards left. The sect elder sat in the arena, breathing heavily. He didn't even have the strength to respond to his opponent. The other warriors spoke up, saying that the man was very tired and therefore would not be able to continue the fight. He had expended a lot of energy. Wei Yingwu raised his head with an effort and muttered through his teeth that he had more than just combat skills in reserve. The man quickly got to his feet. A huge sword appeared in his hands with golden energy emanating from it. Jun Changxiao frowned. This was already an unpleasant surprise. From everything, it appeared that the elder also had a spatial backpack. The branding on the sword indicated that the blade had been forged by Master Fang, one of China's most famous armorers. Wei Yingnu proudly told everyone who had yet to touch a martial art that Master Fan was the best blacksmith in Star Country. He spent a lifetime forging thousands of weapons, each one considered a treasure for martial artists. The elder showed everyone a shiny, curved, serrated blade. He bragged that he had spent a fortune on it. The master solemnly swung a broadsword with a stylistic depiction of flames, and announced that he was showing it in public for the first time. Jun Changxiao noticed the chips on the edge of the sword and frowned and advised him to find a service master first. The elder angrily exclaimed that any weapon from this master was valuable in any case, even if it had flaws. He swung his sword furiously, cutting off chunks of paving stone, and shouted that the guy had simply never encountered a perfect weapon. The man demanded to see his weapon immediately. He was eager to engage in a deadly duel. The young man smiled and asked to wait a bit. He needed to choose a weapon. The boy was just in the process of buying a suitable blade. The system offered to buy the cold sword at a bargain. Jun Changxiao tried out the blade and swung it. It seemed to be a good choice. The elder rejoiced. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Wei Yinu exclaimed that now he could fight and rushed at his opponent. With a few movements, the man broke off many shards from the arena and left a deep furrow in it. As if not noticing his intentions, the young man was thoughtfully practicing with his sword. It looked quite strong. The guy decided to try it out and proudly showed the ninth style technique to everyone gathered. Everything happened too fast. Wei Yinu only realized that something irreparable had happened when he saw the blood spatter. The shard of his perfect sword clanked into a crack in the arena. The Iron Bone sect leader apologized. He wasn't used to the sword yet. At the same moment, the defeated elder fell to his knees exhaustedly. His battle was lost in a few seconds. The power of the Sword of Cold was not only enough to shatter a weapon of dubious origin. Wei Yingwu had lost his arm in this fight. Jun Changxiao even felt a little sorry for his opponent. But then he remembered that the elder was going to kill him. So it was fair. The young man jumped off the platform of justice and decided that henceforth he would compensate people for evil in proportion to their desires. The sect leader called out to his first disciples and said that it was time for them to return. Li Qingqiang was delighted with such an art. The broadsword sect elder couldn't believe that Jun Changxiao had defeated the sect leader Wei Yingwu so calmly. The deacon frowned, saying that the pure water sect would now be furious. His friend wasn't sure the young man could handle an entire sect. At the exit of the city, Jun Changxiao stopped and looked intently at his disciple Li Qingqiang. He gave the guy 10 days to spend with his family and say goodbye with dignity. After that, they would meet in the cult. The young man replied that his father had already started cultivating anyway, so there was no point in going home. The leader suggested that in that case, he should continue on his way. Li Qingqiang smiled shyly and informed the sect leader that he had one presumptuous request. He remembered his favorite girl and stated that he would like to bring one very dear to him into their sect. The head of the sect smiled conspiratorially and asked in a whisper which person the young man was referring to. The boy was embarrassed and replied that it was a woman. Remembering his beauty, Li Qingqiang closed his eyes and reported that it was about the most ordinary girl from a poor family. Jun Changxiao assumed that it was because of the girl that the young man decided to join his Iron Bone sect. Li Qingqiang smiled and admitted that none of the other sects would allow an outsider to be brought in. The leader frowned and said that he would accept the girl with pleasure. They were just short of people to take care of the household. Not holding back his aggression, the young man grabbed his friend and shouted that it was a bit early for him to be thinking about women. The head himself was unmarried and would be jealous. Unfortunately, the conversation took place too late. His beloved had left town and left only a letter for the boy. Li Qingqiang told the sect leader and Lu Qiangqian about it. The girl didn't want to interfere with his future and left of her own free will. The young man replied that it was better for both of them if his beloved had indeed been born into poverty and destitution. Li Qingqiang was surprised to ask if the sect leader really thought so. It turned out to be the majority opinion, but the leader himself thought otherwise. The young man vowed to achieve supremacy and find the girl. Then he will tell his beloved that it was he who was unworthy of her. The sect leader listened intently to the young man's promises and declared that he would turn him into the strongest man. The young man was very much moved by the promises of the sect leader and even wept. Now he saw that he had come to the right place. To his surprise, the sect building looked very abandoned. The roof was holey, the rusty hinges of the door creaked, and the sign was barely hanging on. Li Qingqiang began to realize that he had actually been deceived all this time, and cautiously asked if he could change sects. The young man replied that there was no need to worry about that. They would fix the building. Suddenly, they saw a boy urinating on the wall of the temple. The sect leader shouted that no one dared to desecrate his building and pulled out the sword of cold. The little boy trembled with fear and ran away. He tearfully shouted to his mother that he was being bullied. The young man pretended to keep running after him. When the kid was gone, Jun Changxiao exhaled. He admitted that he didn't like arguing with children and invited the sect members to go inside. As soon as the young man pulled the doorknob, the heavy sign came off and hit him on the head. The followers watched the boss warily. The angry leader with a bloody head drew his sword. Li Qingqiang held it by his belt and explained that it was only a signboard of the sect. The head went inside and showed the interior. He said that the main task now was to rebuild the sect. They needed to repair the windows and doors. After bandaging his head, the young man handed Li Qingqiang a weighty wad of money and smiled. He said that he was entrusting it to him. The cult leader admitted that he had a slight headache and needed to go back to the room. The young man left the followers alone. The girl surprisingly told her friend that their leader was a very strange guy. He could do the repairing of the building himself. A few days later, the building began to change. The renovation was in full swing, and scaffolding was put up around the section. Workers were constantly bringing materials upstairs to fix the roof. The foreman made sure that everything was done properly. Jun Changxiao was satisfied. He didn't miss out. Li Qingqiang had organized the building repairs well, so he could do his own cultivation. For 50 points, the young man bought an ability-enhancing liquid from the system store. It added 1 skill level to the user. Emptying the flask of bluish liquid, the leader remembered that abilities were needed to increase cultivation speed. As soon as the guy drank the entire contents of the container, he felt his spiritual root change, energy pouring out of him. The system reported a successful breakthrough to the next level. The young man was overjoyed, but recognized that it was still not enough for a battle with the Pure Water sect. Jun Changxiao asked if there was a quick way to level up. After receiving the advice, he exchanged the contribution points for a cultivation base. Thanks to the favorable exchange, the young man had broken through to the 10th stage of acupuncture point discovery. His wrists were now adorned with 10 red bracelets. The sect leader shouted excitedly that he felt an incredible power within him. He was ready to roll mountains. Without putting off the experiments for later, Jun Changxiao ran to the nearest wall and punched it with his fist. The wall immediately cracked and began to crumble. The powerful impact created a huge hole in the outer wall. The young man realized that this was not the limit of possibilities. One of the pieces of wall fell right on Li Qingqiang's head. He added the repair to the estimate, and told the head that it would take another 200 taels. The young man gave the follower a huge wad of banknotes that formed a square. Li Qingqiang promised to finish the repair in 3 days. For 3 whole days, Jun Changxiao did not leave his room and cultivated his skills. Finally, the door creaked open and the sect leader walked out. He had used the meditation technique of an elder from the Kaishan Mountain sect. But for the next stage, he still needed to practice a lot more. Suddenly, the young man saw the sect building and was stunned. Now it was unrecognizable. The temple was considerably taller, and tall trees were planted around it. In addition, the surprised fellow noticed several gazebos by the pond. A rock garden was laid out on the extended territory of the sect. Jun Changxiao couldn't believe that this entire complex of buildings belonged to his sect. In just 3 days, his building had turned into a palace. Li Qingqiang saw the enthusiastic young man and smiled. He asked if the head was satisfied with the sect's restoration. The guy turned around and squealed happily. He was very pleased. He even thought at first that he had wandered into someone else's territory. Li Qingqiang suggested looking at the training grounds. The boss happily went ahead and did not immediately realize that the young man wanted to report the renovation costs. The boy handed the cult leader a weighty ledger in a blue cover. On top of it were a few crumpled bills. Jun Changxiao sat down on the porch and almost roared. He couldn't believe that out of all the money he had earned, there were only a few bongs left. Li Qingqiang added that the students also want to remodel the courtyard. It will cost another 4,000 taels. Meanwhile, disciples began to arrive at the sect. One of them exclaimed that the sect was marvelous, and another climbed the pillar at the gate with joy. The head of the sect asked why not all the followers had come. One of the boys replied that some of them lived in remote areas. Suddenly, some man in rags appeared on the horizon. His whole body was trembling. The man was calling for help in a weak voice. Jun Changxiao and Li Qingqiang watched the strange man who walked into their sect with astonishment. The young man stumbled on the threshold, and the head of the sect and his follower were immediately at his side. They helped him to his feet. Li Qingqiang looked at his leader suspiciously. He knew that the boss had only opened himself to the 5th stage, but he managed to be near the guy faster. After taking a little breather, the beaten youth told Jun Changxiao that their group of 30 had been ambushed by bandits. The sect leader asked the young man to get a good rest and unfolded the note he had been handed with his disciple. The note contained ransom conditions. The author of the note promised to kill the hostages if he did not receive the money. The head got angry and tore the letter into small shreds with his internal energy. He angrily exclaimed that the bandits had had enough of living. Li Qingqiang returned from reconnaissance and informed the leader that there were at least 200 bandits on Black Mountain. Their leader had reached the martial arts apprentice stage. The young man really didn't want Jun Changxiao to go to such a dangerous place alone, so he volunteered to accompany him. The head frowned at the follower and said that all the disciples would stay in the sect and go about their business. This was not up for discussion. Those bandits made him very angry. Anyone who dares to threaten the disciples of the Iron Bone sect is not worthy of life. There were steps leading up to the fortress located on top of the Black Mountain. 2 thugs were carefully watching the area. Suddenly, one of them saw a man nearby and said to his partner, it was too audacious to climb the mountain. The martial artist looked back at Jun Changxiao walking up to them and said that it was one of the travelers. The man blocked the way with his long sword and smiled. He offered to give up all his valuables amicably. The guard explained that in that case no one would touch him. If force were to be used, the outsider would be torn to pieces. The sect leader glumly suggested that their boss was in the fortress. The man laughed and pretended not to understand the question. In the next second, Jun Changxiao swept past his partner and deadened the defiant fighter, then repeated his question. Shivering with fear, a surviving guard with a blood-splattered face replied that their boss was indeed in the fortress. The young man smiled gloatingly and asked him to tell the boss that the head of the Iron Bone sect had come to ransom the hostages. The Black Wind sect's fortress was indeed impregnable. It was located in the midst of the high mountains and was protected by a high fence. When they saw the stranger inside the fortress, the fighters surrounded him. One of them gritted his teeth and said that he was lucky the boss had agreed to meet him in person. Jun Changxiao now understood why neither the government nor the sects had been able to take the fortress. It was securely protected by mountains on 3 sides. Meanwhile, the Black Wind warriors reluctantly opened the main gate. They looked hatefully at the stranger who dared to come to the fortress. Several crucifixes were dug into the main courtyard with prisoners tied up. A man beat them repeatedly with a whip, turning their clothes into rags. The head of the fortress sat on a throne. 2 tall warriors stood beside him. 6 more select soldiers stood at the steps leading up to the throne. The young man quickly assessed the strength of the opponents and realized that these 8 people were elites. Each of them was at the 10th stage. He stared intently at the muscular leader. Li Qingqiang was right. This man has the strength of a martial arts disciple. The head smiled politely and said that they were happy to welcome such an honorable guest into their Black Wind sect. The boy reproached himself for coming here alone. The chief's strength could be compared to that of 10 people of his level. Putting on a serious demeanor, Jun Changxiao glumly said that he didn't like wasting time. He had come here for his disciples. The sect leader Zhou Tianba smiled. He liked the guest's businesslike approach. The man said he valued the 30 captives at 3,000 taels. The young man frowned. The bodyguards murmured. It was very cheap. Normally, their leader would set the ransom at twice as much. Jun Changxiao smiled and declared that he was willing to give him 1 tael as payment for his men's stay. Zhou Tianba said in surprise that Mr. Jun didn't quite understand the situation of the wards correctly. He snapped his fingers. There was a rustle in a dark corner. One of the warriors dragged a bound prisoner begging for mercy by the hair. Jun Changxiao immediately recognized his disciple. Now he had no doubts about the ringleader. The man carelessly threw the prisoner at his boss's feet. Zhou Tianba smiled gloatingly and said that he intended to kill one of the disciples, so the ransom would become even smaller. The captured disciple roared and begged not to be killed. He was even willing to join the Black Wind sect and become a slave. The bodyguards laughed amicably. They were pleased that one of the students had been so easily frightened to death. The sect leader turned red with anger. It was clear that he had no use for such a disciple. He had no dignity. Zhou Tianba lifted the young man by his head and severed it from his torso. He assumed that Changxiao would not mind the death of a coward. The system reported 1 vacancy in the sect. The young man gritted his teeth and said he didn't mind. One of the guards laughed loudly and informed him that the man should be grateful. He had been helped to get rid of a cowardly student. In the same second, the guy's body was covered in blood. Jun Changxiao was behind his back and stabbed him through. The sect leader reported that the young man had no manners. Zhou Tianba should not mind that the boor had been taught a lesson. The giant, who was twice the size of the sect head, shouted that the outsider had killed his mate and would pay with his life for it. Both opponents prepared for a fight. The thug clenched his huge fist the size of a boy's head and prepared to attack the enemy. Jun Changxiao adopted a fighting stance while studying his opponent. He had to admit that his opponent's aura was quite strong. The leader of the Black Wind sect asked them both to stop. He said that there were 31 people in captivity, each head worth 100 taels. The young man realized why the head of the fortress was restraining himself. What he really wanted was money. He stated that he could only give 1 tael. Zhou Tianba became angry. He was already acting too diplomatic, but this guy is just being rude. The giant smiled and asked the boss for permission to kill the guest. Then they would search his body and take all the money. The bodyguards cheerfully supported the man. Jun Changxiao took a closer look at his opponent and realized that the strong man would be easy to deal with. One by one, the warriors suggested ways to avenge the 9th leader. Each of them was more horrible in description than the last. The head called the thug over to him and warned him that their guest was very fast. He should be careful. The man laughed back and stated that no human could handle him, no matter how fast he was. He adopted a fighting stance. The spectators murmured in admiration. It was a technique of using the 7-stage shadow transformation. The giant quickly ran towards his opponent with a loud stomp. The young man realized with horror that he was wrong. This guy was too fast. In the same second, the bulky man was behind Jun Changxiao's back. The leader turned pale. He couldn't even follow the enemy. The young man realized that his only hope now was that he could outrun the bulky and clumsy guard. Jun Changxiao ran circles around his opponent, but the man still managed to stay in place and stare straight at him. Despite the guy's fast running, the bulky man's smile appeared from left to right. He exclaimed that Jun Changxiao was running slowly. Zhou Tianba admitted that the young man had managed to improve his technique. One of the bodyguards admitted that even he would have had a hard time dealing with him. He smiled gloatingly and added that at this speed, the guy wouldn't keep up with the thug, even with the fastest sword in the world. Jun Changxiao wrinkled his nose unhappily and said that they were all buzzing like flies and preventing him from concentrating. The young man frowned and looked at his opponent closely. He made a lightning lunge and slashed the air with his sword. The bodyguard recognized that their guest was fast enough. He recognized that their man might miss an accidental blow. Suddenly, the man was silent, terror in his eyes. The sect leader caught the bully during the attack and cut off his head. Jun Changxiao contemptuously said that the giant couldn't even turn. It was enough for him to bump into his sword. The guards snapped out of their seats at the same time and mobbed the offender. It was the second solid loss. The boy stood calmly in place. He assumed that all the warriors were actually weaklings, so they decided to attack all at once. No amount of exhortation worked. 4 blows came right where the young man was standing, and he barely had time to jump back. The leader shouted that the bodyguards had provoked him themselves, and now he would have to use his trump card. A weapon hilt appeared in the guy's hand. A steel sword blade began to grow out of the air at the hilt. Jun Changxiao proudly said that it was a catastrophe sword and lunged towards the opponents. To his surprise, the sword was very short. Its blade was even shorter than the hilt. It became obvious that it would not be enough for an advantage. One of the opponents was almost crying with laughter. He wasn't sure if such a trump sword could cut even an apple. This was enough for Zhou Tianba. He ordered to immediately grab the guy and search him for valuables. The forces were clearly unequal. The young man knew he would have to give his best, each of the four of them outnumbering him in strength. There was only one last chance left. The sect leader used the spell to open the first seal and unlocked the Sword of Catastrophe. A blinding source of light appeared where Jun Changxiao was standing. It spread out in bright rays in all directions. Covering their eyes, all four fighters puzzled over where this strong source of light had come from. It swept past their heads. The light reached the head of the fortress as well. He thought, covering his eyes with his hands, that a small knife could not give off so much light unless it was of high quality. Opening his eyes, Zhou Tianba realized with horror that the blade was at the bridge of his nose and trembled in fear. On the turn, that small knife turned into a sword with a long blade of 40 meters after activating the spell. Trying not to give away his excitement, the head of the fortress insinuated to himself that it was not the length of the sword that frightened him, but the pressure their guest was exerting. For some time the rivals were against each other. None of the bodyguards dared to interfere with the young man. Jun Changxiao was pleased that the catastrophe sword had grown in size. But still 40 meters was a bit much for a slashing weapon. Still trembling with fear, Zhou Tianba asked the young man to put his sword away and calmly discuss everything. The sect leader admitted that this sword is difficult to remove, so he has to say goodbye to some viewers. He swung his blade lightning fast, decapitating 2 bodyguards with one blow, and knocked a piece of the backrest and headrest off the throne. Both warriors fell breathlessly to the floor. The splinters from the throne continued to fall downward, making it even more frightening. The head of the fortress was stunned. He couldn't believe that 2 of his best men had died in 1 second. Jun Changxiao revealed that he had only spared him because he wanted to ask a few questions. That was why he was able to dodge. Zhou Tianba was surprised to hear that it wasn't just these 2 trustworthy guys who had actually been killed. The entire fortress was cracking at the seams. Even the tall trees outside were only low stumps. The weapons were destructive. All around, the walls were crumbling. The young man proudly said that he had come here today to help the people of Qingyang City. All the bandits as one began to beg for mercy. They had seen what this guy was capable of and begged to be let go. The guy angrily recalled how many innocent souls they'd put to death and declared that he couldn't afford it. Jun Changxiao gripped the hilt of his sword tighter. He frowned and announced that today would bring death to each of them. With a single swing of his sword, the sect leader massacred all the opponents, their bodies instantly cut in half. Turning to the head of the fortress, the young man said that it was now just the 2 of them, and raised his sword upwards. He gave a friendly smile and announced that he would allow his opponent to run the full 39 meters. Zhou Tianba already knew it was useless to run. He fell to his knees and begged for mercy, promising to bring back all the disciples. Feeling the sword above his head, the head trembled. Jun Changxiao inquired about his sect's interest. Stammering, the head of the fortress mumbled that he had just heard about the Iron Bone sect's recruitment of disciples a few days ago. The young man struck the sword to the right and left of the man, scaring him a little. The boy said he wanted to hear the truth. Zhou Tianba raised his head and roared that he had been paid by the Pure Water sect. Their head ordered to kidnap the disciples and kill the leader. Jun Changxiao said goodbye to the head of the fortress. He elicited the information he needed. The sword blade collapsed on the palisade and killed the head. The system reported the completion of the additional task and awarded 50 points. The sword turned back into a short knife. Suddenly, the young man learned that after using the catastrophe sword, he would experience fatigue for half an hour and would be left completely defenseless. Losing consciousness, the guy thought that the system could have informed him a little earlier. Fortunately, he had already eliminated everyone. The sect leader was lying on the floor and breathing heavily. He looked at the result of his activity and thought that now 200 enemies would not harm anyone. A man was sitting on the doorstep, clearly nervous. He tried to calm his anxiety with his hand, but it didn't help much. That man was Qinqiang Li. The guy was sitting on the steps of the sect and asked Lu Qianqian what they should do if something happened to the sect leader. She said that it was easy because she would be the head of the sect and he would be her first disciple. Nevertheless, with a stony expression on her face, the girl said that in any case, they had far more than one secret in their heads. Suddenly, however, while looking into the distance, she opened her eyes wide. The image of the protagonist appeared before her eyes as he approached them with an easy gait. Qinqiang Li immediately ran up to the protagonist and said that he had finally realized that it was too dangerous to go alone, and it was better to report it to the authorities. However, Jun Changxiao easily passed by his second disciple and said that there were 30 disciples at the foot of the mountain and told someone to take them away. The man closed his eyes and asked if Qinqiang Li wanted to upgrade the courtyard earlier. Immediately afterward, he threw some bars of gold into the hands of his second disciple and told him to take this. Qinqiang Li clearly didn't expect this, and with an expression of incomprehension, he wanted to ask what happened to the Black Wind sect. Of course, a creepy smile appeared on the protagonist's face, and he interjected to ask about this particular sect. The guy turned back around and said with a slight smile that it had already been destroyed. At the same time in Black Mountain, only ruins remained of the sect. The man saluted his superior and said that, judging from the wounds on these bandits, they were killed by the same weapon. The man said that, judging from the location of the wounds on their bodies, it is likely that they were killed by the same person. That mysterious man smiled eerily and asked if he had done it alone, then said that he might be a powerful man in the city. At the same time, incense was smoking and smoldering elsewhere. Jun Changxiao paid his respects to that very tablet and closed his eyes and said that he was counting on it to continue. As it turns out, he built a literal small temple for his system. The guy activated the system and realized that he now had both disciples and a sect. The guy realized that he needed a basic cultivation technique, but it wasn't available in the store. The guy realized that he had to upgrade for 10 points of contribution value to his store. Jun Changxiao realized that the result would be completely random, and he might just be left with nothing. The guy didn't realize that he was always out of luck, and gave up wondering what he should do in this case. Desperately, he realized that he would have a better chance if he made 10 attempts in a row. In the end, Jun Changxiao made up his mind and risked his 10 points. At the same time, the value of the sect's contribution decreased by 10. Suddenly, the system window lit up with a bright light, and the guy stared at the pop-up in bewilderment. Jun Changxiao opened his eyes wide as he couldn't believe what he was seeing. As it turns out, he had obtained an initial divine-level cultivation technique. Jun Changxiao was literally dancing and crying with happiness. The system congratulated the protagonist and said that the chance of obtaining a divine-level motivation technique of the initial store was less than 1%. In joy, Jun Changxiao gathered Lu Qiangqian and Qinqiang Li in the assembly hall. Once they gathered, Qinqiang Li looked at the goofy expression on the protagonist's face and said that he looked very happy. The guy coughed and said that he had just solved an important problem for their sect. However, as soon as Jun Changxiao presented his project, both disciples stood puzzled, because they didn't understand why their uniforms were considered an important problem. The guy held up a piece of paper and said he was done. Then he asked to find a tailor in town to live the uniform. Qinqiang Li bewilderedly asked the protagonist if it was considered his first priority to teach cultivation techniques to newcomers. After that, he looked at the drawing and said that the collar on the uniform was very big. However, this infuriated the protagonist and told him to shut up, asking him if he knew who the head of the sect was. However, Jun Changxiao did not ignore his disciple's question, and slowly took out a certain book from his sinus. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and said that he had a Yikin scripture. The system described this scripture as a very good technique that was suitable for martial artists in the stage of opening acupuncture points, and also mentioned that after completing it, it would strengthen the body and increase the chance of level up by 50%. The system reported that the requirements had been met. It also said that the sect cultivation technique would activate automatically. The guy was greatly surprised. Jun Changxiao wondered what the sect cultivation technique was for, to which the system replied that only the sect head disciples could cultivate it. While Jun Changxiao was wielding the system's tablet, the other disciples looked at him like he was crazy. The system said that if any of the disciples gave the sect the information and write-offs to others or were expelled, his or her memory and techniques would be erased. Jun Changxiao smiled widely, as he realized that this was an incredible intellectual property protection that he would definitely need. Jun Changxiao was literally shining with happiness as he realized that he didn't have to worry about someone trying to steal it. At the same time, Qinqiang Li waved his hand in front of the protagonist's face, trying to get him out of his daze. Jun Changxiao said that he was using the Yijing scripture he created as a sect cultivation technique. The unexpected system reported that in order to print 99 copies of the scripture, one would need here contribution value points. The guy had obviously not expected this, and was covered in sweat. However, he quickly came to his senses and told me to distribute these books to the students. Lu Qiangqian and Qinqiang Li looked at the protagonist with disbelief, since there was no way that he could create a cultivation technique at the proper level. Nevertheless, Qinqiang Li opened the book and began to read into the writing. The guy instantly realized that this technique is awesome and really perfectly balanced. Qinqiang Li realized that the mid-level technique his father had bought was no match for him. He wondered if it could be a supreme technique. Jun Changxiao then placed his hand on Qinqiang Li's shoulder, who thanked the head. Lu Chengqian looked at the protagonist and asked if they could let her pass, if the technique they had created was inferior to the one they were using right now. Jun Changxiao bent down in front of the girl and looked her eyes, calling her name. He moved closer to her ear and said that if the technique she cultivated was divine level, then she naturally could do it. The girl flushed and instantly left the hall with the words that she would check everything out. Jun Changxiao smiled because he assumed that the girl was shy. He thought that he wasn't aloof enough. At the same time, Qinqiang Li was in the background asking for help. Jun Changxiao walked up to the guy and asked, how did he confuse himself so much, to which the guy replied that he was just practicing writing. The girl opened the writing and was greatly surprised. She realized that it seemed simple, but it was actually very complicated. And she instantly realized that it must be the divine level. Lu Qiangqian realized that a martial arts master at the stage of discovering cultural points would never be able to create such a technique. She wondered if everyone who was iron-blooded could really be a forgotten ancient sect. The girl exhaled and realized that she had just completed several microscopic orbits, and they were completely compatible with her freezing skill. She smiled as she realized that if she practiced them together, she would be able to carry out her revenge very soon. Lu Chengqian realized that she had greatly underestimated everyone who was iron-blooded, and especially her leader. At the same time, Jun Changxiao also exhaled. He turned to the system and said he had been practicing for an hour. His legs were numb, but he still hadn't learned anything. The system said that even if the scripture was easy to understand, it would be harder for him than others because he didn't have good spiritual roots. Jun Changxiao questioned whether it thought that without the system, he was nothing. The system explicitly responded that this was exactly the case. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and said that he would finish it even if it took a whole year. The guy didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to cultivate without a system. After that, he got into the rack and continued his workout. 2 days later, a black-eyed Jun Changxiao rejoiced the whole after such an amount of time. He was finally able to activate the microcosmic orbit. The system immediately congratulated the protagonist and gave him 30 contribution value points at once. The guy realized that the system doesn't want him to depend on it, and luckily Jun Changxiao is hardworking. Right after that, Qinqiang Li burst into the room and said that he had reached the macrocosmic orbit in 2 days, and very soon he would be able to reach the 11th stage of opening points at the culture. Hearing such praising fashions to himself, Jun Changxiao couldn't help but choke up. Immediately afterward, loud shouts and insults were heard from the hall. There was a huge amount of energy accumulating around a certain guy while he sat in lotus pose and meditated. He stood up abruptly and laughed. It turned out that he had just reached the 4th stage of opening acupuncture points. Immediately afterward, however, a pillow flew into his face. The roommate said he was the last one in their dormitory to reach the level after everyone started studying the scripture. He questioned, "What's the point of bragging right now?" and said to give him back his pillow. The blushing guy only sent his friend away. The next day, Qinqiang Li reported that on the 10th day of scripture cultivation, 10 people had reached the 3rd level, 5 had reached the 4th level, and 1 had reached the 5th level. The guy said that on the 20th day, all the disciples had increased their level. He also said that it was amazing how many disciples raised their level on the same day. Jun Changxiao calmly tended to the leaves in the garden and called out his disciple's name. He turned back around and said that from now on it would be routine, and second apprentice he should get used to it. The apprentice immediately saluted his master and said that he was amazing because he had created such an amazing cultivation technique. The guy apologized because he was overreacting, and now he would organize further training for the disciples. Immediately after that, Qinqiang Li turned back, and Jun Changxiao abruptly reached out. He smiled as he realized that the level increase had happened so quickly. He was glad that it was indeed a divine level technique, but regretted that it didn't help him much. Pretty soon he was looking away with sweat on his face. The boy said he would never get rid of his bad luck. He grabbed his head because he didn't understand why he hadn't been able to level up, even though he had been absorbing spiritual energy all day. Jun Changxiao realized that the success rate was only half, but he was the only one in the entire network who hadn't leveled up. And it was all because of his ordinary spiritual root. Immediately afterward, however, the system offered a solution that was a pill. She said that the spiritual energy was increased 5 times, and it was worth 10 points of contribution value. Jun Changxiao realized that this was just a wonderful everlasting cultivation, and immediately bought this pill. Without thinking long, Jun Changxiao threw this pill into his mouth and instantly felt a change. He realized that he could absorb spiritual energy by activating the microcosmic orbit. He was happy because he would soon have enough energy to level up. The guy clenched his fist and realized that about this speed was most likely his disciple Qinqiang Li's, which made him very happy. The system said that the disciple had a higher spiritual level and was absorbing energy much faster than Jun Changxiao, and he couldn't imagine how happy he was. Out of anger, Jun Changxiao immediately dispelled the system's message by telling it to shut up. Very soon, deep in the night, Jun Changxiao was still absorbing energy. His body felt as if it was cracking. Suddenly, Jun Changxiao opened his eyes. He was happy because he had finally discovered the 11th stage of acupuncture points. The system reminded her that despite the help of the writing and energy-gathering pill, it still took 5 tries. She wished she could give him the title of the most untalented man in the world. Jun Changxiao noticed that it was said that this pill could only be used by the sect head, and legitimately asked if that meant that there were pills for disciples. The system said it was true, and she was impressed with her master's intelligence. She also said she had a recommendation, and showed the information of energy harvesting to the students. Jun Changxiao realized that 1 point of deposit value per day was a very bad deal, and even completely what he had, he would only be able to keep it up for a month. The system said that only when the disciples became stronger, then the sect could become the same, and strongly recommended this item. Jun Changxiao agreed, and bought the formation after all. The system alerted that Jun Changxiao had spent 10 contribution value points to buy 1 gathering information. It wasn't long before a basket of flags and instructions for use appeared in the hands of the protagonist. The system reminded that the value of the sect's contribution was 30 points out of 100. Jun Changxiao had already started to read the instructions as he suddenly heard a loud scream. One of the students abruptly walked into the protagonist's room and said that someone was causing trouble at the entrance. The guy squinted his eyes and asked exactly if someone was causing trouble. After that, he smiled and said that it was about time he got some more experience. With a loud sound and incredible force, the foot ended up on the stomach of one of the passers-by. The guy coughed up blood from such a strong blow. Some hooligans said to beat him and show no mercy. It must have been retaliation for the stolen pills. A certain man with a calm gait approached the beaten victim and said that he didn't have a good cultivation base, but he was pretty fast at running. Looking at the victim as if he were nothing, he resented having to follow him to this dump. She, of course, someone shouted, "Everybody stop." The men immediately looked in the direction of the voice. Jun Changxiao stood at the threshold of the gate and said that this was the territory of all iron-blooded people and told them to scram and fight elsewhere. The same man got angry and asked how the man dared to talk to him. However, it didn't take long for the protagonist to find herself right in this villain's face. The man was literally thrown back from such a hard blow, and his subordinates began to worry for their young master. With a clatter, the man found himself at the nearest tree post bleeding out. At the same time, the main characters wondered why he hit him since he didn't mean to. A subordinate approached his boss and begged him to wake up. Another subordinate asked the protagonist how dare he kick the 3rd son of the Hai family and threatened to pay for it. Jun Changxiao smiled and asked if the Hai family was that strong. All the other disciples also began to gather at the entrance of the sect. Jun Changxiao asked if that family had the strength to destroy his sect. Jun Changxiao looked back and realized that his heart had become more united after they had all upgraded. Qinqiang Li approached the protagonist and said that the Hai family owns the largest pill business in the city, and is the supplier of many sects who has great connections. The very 3rd young gentleman inhaled the air sharply into his nostrils. However, this did not save the fact that his nose began to bleed again while he was yelling at the protagonist. Haizu wondered how Jun Changxiao dared to hit him in the face. He shouted about how he wanted to see the head of their sect. Jun Changxiao abruptly realized why he had such a sudden urge to kick him as soon as he saw him. Jun Changxiao said that he looked simply disgusting, and with these words, his opponent was clearly a people. Haizu demanded to call the sect head here. However, Jun Changxiao slicked back his hair and asked why call him since Jun Changxiao is the sect leader. Haizu, along with his subordinates, looked at the protagonist as if he was an idiot, or stood silently. They obviously didn't believe him, because they started shouting and calling for the sect leader. Jun Changxiao turned to the stone at the same time. The guy grabbed the bully by the collar and asked if he was an idiot because the head of the sect was right in front of him, and if he couldn't see anything. Immediately afterward, he threw Haizu into flight once more and told him to take off. The subordinates surrounded their master as he said they would leave and then sleep them later. While the subordinates were literally carrying their boss in their arms, Jun Changxiao turned to the 2nd disciple. Jun Changxiao literally asked with tears in his eyes whether he didn't look like a sect leader. It was not long before the victim of the beatings found himself in the sect building. He was obviously deeply wounded and could only grunt in pain. Qinqiang Li said that 8's ribs are broken, and he is showing signs of internal bleeding. The guy also said that he could only last 4 hours at most. However, there was nothing the doctor could do about it anymore. However, right after that, he looked at the main character and remembered that there was a way out of this situation. The guy said that if the one uses a healing pill passed down from ancient times. Lu Qianqian asked, "Does Qinqiang Li think it is some kind of candy that is so easy to get?" Jun Changxiao said that he actually had healing pills and wondered if he should save him. The first student and the second student were immediately divided in their opinion. Hearing such contradictory answers, Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and realized that this was quite an interesting situation. Qinqiang Li proved his words with the assertion that saving people is the greatest virtue. However, Lu Qianqian disagreed and said that many people were dying in Starland and asked if he could save them all. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and said that the second disciple's kindness was priceless. The guy got up from his chair and said that reality is sometimes cruel. Jun Changxiao said that when he gave him that pill, or he didn't know that it would be so effective. The guy said that now that he had learned more on it, he didn't want to use it to save people he didn't know. Qinqiang Li asked if Jun Changxiao regretted saving him. Jun Changxiao said that since he had joined the Iron Bone sect and became a second disciple, he did not regret it. And on the contrary, if he had not done so, it would have been his biggest regret. The guy took out a pill from his inventory and said that the healing pill had brought him a talented disciple. Looking at the guy's face, he said hopefully he could get something special this time too. Lu Qianqian was surprised and asked if he would really save him, and wondered if he thought everyone was so talented like Qinqiang Li. Jun Changxiao said that maybe he was just lucky and made the guy swallow the pill. The pill went downtown and was successfully absorbed by the guy, literally. A second later, the man who would seemingly be dead a couple hours later coughed loudly and woke up. Jun Changxiao had already started to say that he had used a valuable pill to save him as a guy, interrupted him and asked if it was really Jun Changxiao. Immediately afterward, he bowed before the protagonist and began to beg for acceptance. Jun Changxiao said that he was going to keep quiet, but he got to the point himself. Jun Changxiao asked what his name was. The guy said that his name was Xiao Zuiji, and he was a direct descendant of the Xiao family from Liang City. Qinqiang Li was very much surprised when he heard the guy's name, and asked if he really was who he introduced himself as he was a rare talent with a supreme spiritual root. The main character's eyes instantly lit up, and he felt that he had hit the jackpot. Xiao Zuiji was a direct descendant of the Xiao family from Liang City. His supreme spiritual root was known to absolutely everyone in this city. However, at some point, his spiritual root degraded to the lowest level. His 12 meridians joined together, and his cultivation base disappeared. Immediately afterward, his fiancée broke off the engagement and humiliated him. Qinqiang Li said he dishonored the family and was expelled, while Jun Changxiao said he was born to be a talk show host. Jun Changxiao instantly realized that he was a loser, and his eyes lit up. Jun Changxiao smiled. I after all realized that he would be the one to unlock his potential. Xiao Zuoji asked if Jun Changxiao would really take such a loser to him. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and realized something amiss. The guy said, naturally he's not going to take anything. Xiao Zuoji literally cried as he realized that this was what he was thinking about because he didn't deserve to be a disciple of the Iron Blood sect. The guy turned around and apologized for the trouble he had caused. Qinqiang Li had already tried to explain to Xiao Zuiji that if he stayed here, with their sect leader's instructions, he would definitely recover his cultivation base. However, Jun Changxiao stopped him. The guy said there was a rock to the left of the entrance, and he could jump from there if he wanted to die, and maybe new opportunities would open up for him. Heading towards the exit of the strongman said that the moment he became a failure for him, all new possibilities closed. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that opportunities open up for those who are ready, and no one is born strong in this world. As if to press the hurt, Jun Changxiao asked if he would accept his fiancée breaking off the engagement. While Jun Changxiao was asking if he could bear to be abandoned by his family, Xiao Zuiji began to slowly turn back. Jun Changxiao looked at the boy's crying face and asked another question. He asked him if he wanted to get up. I told his unthinking fiancé and cold-blooded family that people change. Looking at Jun Changxiao's crying face, he said that this was the end of it. While sitting down and clenching his fist, Jun Changxiao said that if he wasn't ready, he should really leave. Right after saying that, the guy knelt down and said that she wanted to join all who are different bones and wanted to get back what he lost. Jun Changxiao said that he had been depressed for too long. Despite this, Xiao Zuji's face was literally glowing with happiness, and Jun Changxiao said that it was time for him to regain his former glory. It wasn't long before Jun Changxiao was in his palace. The man blew on the tea trying to cool it down, and felt that convincing the guy he had reached on and restoring his confidence in martial arts was a tough job, and Jun Changxiao had boundaries with him. The guy smiled and realized that the student's talent in sex was not so good, and now he had another one, which is a waste of space. The system said that this only marked the development of the sect. Jun Changxiao asked, "The system does not think that you are there training. There is a great sense of satisfaction. Also, the main character needed to do this because it was a task with a 5-point reward." The guy understood that with Xiaozuiji, the number of sect members had reached 100 people, and asked if they could start the sect's mission. The system said that it had detected the required number of members, and the mission was starting. Jun Changxiao opened his eyes wide. Right in front of the main character was at once a huge list of all the tasks of different varieties that, not on a joke, scared the head hero. However, what made Jun Changxiao even more resentful was the fact that this was just an ordinary household chore. The system said that if Jun Changxiao was unhappy with these tasks, he could spend 10 points to upgrade, and he instantly changed his shoes. Jun Changxiao shouted to the second disciple to take the students to complete the tasks. Pretty soon, absolutely all the students were busy with strange errands, the meaning of which they still didn't understand. Similarly, Lu Chenqian, who had been tediously rewriting texts for a very long time, was also busy. She was angry the entire Jun Changxiao had tricked her into writing letters. The girl asked a nearby man what he wanted her to write, but the man clearly did not hear her. Realizing that perhaps because of his old age he had begun to have trouble hearing the girl, increased her volume and asked again. However, it still didn't have the desired effect. The girl was literally busting her throat and asking what the man really wanted her to write, and her screams could even be heard outside. In a certain room, Jun Changxiao could sneeze more easily. Jun Changxiao scrunched his nose and said to the system that wasting points made him corrupted. Guy looked at the strange structure and said he hoped the true 10 points were worth it. The system said that the machine could accurately check the force of the blow, and he could measure the force of his blow and his students at regular intervals. Jun Changxiao concentrated the energy in his hands and decided to give it a try. Facing the so-called punching bag, he struck with all his might. The system said that the punch that Jun Changxiao threw was equal to about 900 kilograms. She also reported that the blow delivered by a fighter in the 11th stage of the opening stage of what culture is only 750 kilograms. The guy smiled and realized that it was probably because of the writing, and he wanted to try again. However, an unexpectedly loud scream brought the protagonist out of his positive state. The guy realized that the voice was deep loud, and it sounded like it was coming from 1,000 miles away, and it was most likely one of his enemies. The guy saw Lu Chenqian near the gate and asked if she had seen the enemies outside. However, unexpectedly, he heard this voice exactly from Lu Chenqian and was covered in sweat. A furious woman asked if he knew what it was like to write letters for a bunch of old men. The girl screamed and demanded the protagonist to return her sweet voice, while Jun Changxiao begged her not to punch him in the face. Jun Changxiao clapped his hands as if congratulating someone. The guy pointed his thumb and said that he had designed them himself, and they were the perfect embodiment of their sect's temperament. As it turned out, the sect had been given new uniforms. The girls' uniforms were red, while the guys were blue. However, Qin Qiang Li wanted to change the subject. The guy asked what had happened to his face. Indeed, the protagonist's face looked like there was no living spot on it. At these words, Jun Changxiao said that he was just practicing writing and had gone too far. Suddenly, Lu Chenqian said in her broken voice that she hated red light. Qin Qiang Li was very much surprised the whole didn't recognize this voice and started to look around for it. Jun Changxiao panicked and told Qin Qiang Li to give his uniform to Lu Chenqian. After that, the guy looked at the girl and asked if it would suit her. The girl clenched her fist and frowned heavily. Jun Changxiao understood that this was not like a simple dislike for the color red. The guy wondered when this girl would reveal her past to him, as suddenly someone burst into the hall and called out to the protagonist. Su Xiaomo ran into the hall and said that there was an elderly person outside who wanted to see the protagonist. Jun Changxiao said that he could already feel the aggression in his breath, and was surprised that he himself didn't rush over here while the system issued the main character a task to teach the high family elder a lesson. Quite soon, Jun Changxiao walked out to the doorstep, while the elder said that he did not expect Jun Changxiao to be so polite. With a contrived smile, he asked if the guy was the leader of the Iron Blood sect, and introduced himself as Hai Shanke. Jun Changxiao asked if the man came here because Hai Zu was beaten up, to which the man agreed. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that he was causing trouble in front of his sect, and was trying to fight with his disciples. Jun Changxiao said that it was quite reasonable that he had been taught a lesson. Hai Shanke squinted his eyes and asked if the one who stole the pills from the Hai family was also his disciple. The man said that for the sake of the 100 sect union, the Hai family would let the thief go, but since they had beaten up Hai Zhu, he should take revenge on him. Hai Shanke opened his eyes and said that he was obliged to break his arms and legs. Jun Changxiao clapped his hands and said that he was inviting the elder to the training ground. The guy smiled caustically and asked politely. It wasn't long before both men were in the building and heading to the training area. Actually, she was surprised that Jun Changxiao, who was only at the discovery stage of that cultivation, had the guts to challenge him, a martial arts disciple at the 5th stage. While some followers were scared for the protagonist, others realized that the bandit leader on the Black Mountain was also a martial arts student. However, they were all killed by the leader. It shouldn't be a problem for him. Hearing the whispers, the man was greatly surprised at the familiar name. The man squinted his eyes and said that he would not be able to get out of the Black Wind sect unharmed, and asked, is Jun Changxiao so desperate for 1,000 taels that he even lied to his disciples? Jun Changxiao didn't understand at all what the man was talking about, or what thousands of taels the man was talking about. Suddenly the guy remembered that there was a reward for killing bandits, and some people would want to take it. The guy realized that he had to go to the city as soon as possible. It wasn't long before the opponents were on the training ground, and Hai Shanke took out his blade. He asked if Jun Changxiao was ready. Jun Changxiao picked up the fast-running talisman and asked the elder something. The guy asked if he knew that among all martial arts skills, speed matters. However, the man was not going to finish listening to the protagonist's speech. With a sharp movement of his hand, he ripped off the main character's arm and leg, crippling him, fully confident of his victory. The man said that being fast is his credo. However, Jun Changxiao was immediately behind the man's back afterward and asked what he was still doing here. The man was very surprised at the fact that Jun Changxiao was unharmed and panicked. As it turns out, the man struck a blow to the residual image of the main character. That very image began to slowly fade away, and before its end only smiled evilly. When the man saw such a technique, he was very frightened that it was some kind of spirit. The man opened his mouth wide and screamed in fear. Lunging backwards, Hai Shanke pointed his blade at the protagonist and said that it was sorcery, and he was most likely using some kind of magic. Jun Changxiao took a step forward and said that he would do it again. While Hai Shanke squinted his eyes, Jun Changxiao told him not to blink. A moment later, Jun Changxiao was behind Hai Shanke's back and asked if he had seen what had happened. Hai Shanke naturally couldn't notice such swift movements and made a sharp wave of his hand, questioning if this was really sorcery. However, Jun Changxiao said that it wasn't witchcraft at all, and I was usually a footwork. As it turned out, that very swing of his hand merely tore up a residual image from that very image, and said that this technique is called phantom. Su Xiaomo couldn't help but be surprised. He opened his eyes wide and wondered if he was seeing an illusion. The guy didn't understand why he was seeing more than one leader here. Hai Shanke was surprised because he realized that the main character's quick steps had created an illusion. Immediately afterward, the protagonist's face was right in front of the man's own nose, and the man said with a snide smile that the man was smart. Immediately afterward, Jun Changxiao made an uppercut to the man and knocked him to the floor. However, even though this strike was very unexpected, Hai Shanke was able to stop halfway and keep his balance. Rashly, the man turned in the direction where Jun Changxiao was and called him a name. However, the protagonist was long gone and was once again behind the man's back. After that, he made another kick and felled the man again. This time, he couldn't stop anymore and crashed face first into a rock. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that one must act as not aggressive, but he is offensive. The guy said he didn't want to use it too often. The second student said that the leader is always very bossy, to which the third was silent. The man couldn't believe it because he was a 5th stage martial arts disciple. His eyes seemed to light up with light, and he asked as he humiliated him. Immediately afterward, the man made vertical sweeps of his arm and released the powerful nets. Jun Changxiao, looking at this attack, could only sigh, and his residual image distorted once again. The boy called out again to the elder, who was fearfully looking for the protagonist. The guy was right in front of his face and held his hand with the blade. Jun Changxiao asked if he thought it was necessary to continue fighting. The system deemed the task complete and gave the protagonist 50 contribution value points. The guy realized that the bigger the gap in strength, the more contribution value points he could get. It wasn't long before Hai Shanke calmed down and saluted the main character. He thanked him for his concern. Jun Changxiao, with a cracked smile, put his hand on the man's shoulder, who couldn't help but jump up in surprise and fear. Jun Changxiao said that it was his disciple who stole their pills, and he as the sect leader was also to blame. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that his disciple had been badly beaten by Mr. Hai Zhu. After that, he asked if it was considered that they were even. The guy squinted his eyes and pressed the man to ask what he thought about it. With a sport on his face, The man bowed to the main character again, and said that he, young people, energetic and fighting is normal, and the Hai family. It is not interested at all. After saying that, Hai Shanke stood up to go down to the foot of the mountain. The man realized that he had clearly underestimated the Ironbone sect's litra, and he should tell the head of the family to treat this guy well and not make an enemy out of him. Hai Shanke realized that at this speed it would be easy for him to kill even martial artists. Meanwhile, two concerned voices sounded in the forest thicket. The woman's voice told the man not to fool around and asked what if someone saw them. However, the man said that no one was here, and he had not seen her for several days. He said that he missed her so much that he couldn't eat or sleep. The man was about to kiss his blushing girlfriend when he noticed something strange. The man looked up where he was trying to question what that noise was. As it turned out, on the tree branch was Jun Changxiao, who revealed that he was just drawing their picture, and the residual image of the guy disappeared into thin air. Then that very same drawing went down while both of the people watching stood in a stupor. The man shouted loudly that it was the ghost, and many birds were frightened by such a sound. Meanwhile, Jun Changxiao fled to the city with all his might. Guy realized that as a senior member of the single-man kingdom, he had the overriding principles of breaking up all couples. With tears in his eyes, the man realized that the fast-running spell still worked, but he must hurry to the city and get the reward. Not noticing that in this way, Jun Changxiao interfered with everyone else. Huge gusts of wind and pressure rushed to the gates of the city, and wondered if perhaps he would find a beautiful girl. It wasn't long before Jun Changxiao found himself outside the city mansion. With the force of stopping his own body from the incredible speed, Jun Changxiao found himself right beside the guard, who was looking at the protagonist like he wasn't crazy. With heavy breathlessness, Jun Changxiao smiled and asked him to tell the city lord that the leader of the Iron Blood sect was here, and he was here to collect the reward for destroying the Black Age sect. The guard took the leaf in his hands and told him to take a number and get in line. Jun Changxiao turned extremely pale when he heard about a certain line. The guard pointed his finger at the scene and said that they all said that they had destroyed the Black Wind sect. Jun Changxiao looked in that direction and saw many masters waiting for their reward. At the same time, a loud shout was heard from the city lord's mansion. Not who was shouting that even a lowly person dared to claim the reward. After that, with tremendous force, another fake annihilator was pushed out of the mansion. However, it turned out that it wasn't a punch at all, but merely sound waves in which even Jun Changxiao himself was surprised. The system said that the city lord was stronger than Hai Shanke of the Kangshan Mountain sect, and he was at least a grand master of martial arts. After that, Jun Changxiao coughed and was about to shout out his speech. Jun Changxiao said that he was the Iron Bone leader, and he was here to meet with the city lord. The city lord said that he had heard a little bit about the recruitment meeting for rookies that was held a month ago. However, he was conducting closed training and could not invite him to the mansion. The man told the protagonist to come in. It wasn't long before Jun Changxiao found himself in the conference room right in front of the man. The city lord was glad for the chance to meet the protagonist. He felt that Jun Changxiao met his expectations and was a talented young man. Nevertheless, the man squinted his eyes and asked if the guy had really come for the award. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that it was indeed true, and he was the one who had destroyed all those black winds. Another man who was also in the room asked with what kind of strength he was able to do this, and said stop. The man said that the protagonist was just short of money and had come to cheat them. Exhaling, Jun Changxiao asked the city lord who the two trolls were. The city lord said that these two are the elders of the Spring Water sect. Wei Yi on the left and Wei Yil on the right. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and realized that enemies were always encountered. The city lord asked the protagonist how he could prove that the Black Wind sect was destroyed by him. Jun Changxiao said that he alone climbed the mountain and killed the sect's literature, and over 200 bandits, and no one saw it. The city lord felt that Jun Changxiao was lying again. However, Jun Changxiao smiled and started pulling out something from his inventory, and said that he had some evidence. From the protagonist's inventory, a 1.5 sword appeared. The city lord immediately realized that this sword belonged to Zhou Tianba. Wei Yi realized that the matter was taking a strange turn. In the hands of the protagonist was a green dragon sword. The guy realized that if it wasn't for the system, he wouldn't have been able to pull this off. He'd accidentally broken the blade. The system only required 1 point to fix it, which couldn't have been bad news. Wei Yil said that when they went to the Black Mountain, the green dragon blade they rode was just like him. Wei Yil asked if everyone who Black Wind had really been destroyed by the protagonist and couldn't believe it. The city lord said that this blade really proves that he was the one who destroyed the Black Dragon sect. The man asked for a little more detail. At the same time, the system gave the protagonist side quests to convince the man that Jun Changxiao was the one who destroyed the Black Wind sect. The guy licked his lips as he realized that this story assignment would be obviously simple. Jun Changxiao smiled and realized that he had to learn how to tell stories. Jun Changxiao said that it was impossible to kill only bandits alone. The city lord asked if there was anyone who helped him. The guy said that this someone was not a human, but spirits. The guy said that to be precise, it was the spirits of the Iron Blood sect. Okay, the hero said that being an ancient sector she has lost her former glory. However, the spirits of their ancestors still exist. Jun Changxiao said that when she is in danger, then the spirit appears beside him and endows him with great strength. The guy squinted his eyes as he realized that he was a newcomer to the discovery stage, and the cultural points and destroy the Black Wind sect alone was unrealistic. The guy realized that he had to say something that they could not confirm. He by elder instantly rose from their seats and said that Jun Changxiao was fooling them. The elders told the city lord not to believe this story, but the man only remained silent. The city lord asked if Jun Changxiao could demonstrate spirit attachment. Wei Yil saluted the city lord and said that he was ready to fight the protagonist and see the power of the spirits on the training ground. The man said that he believed that Mr. Jun Changxiao would not be afraid of this challenge. At the same time, Jun Changxiao asked the system in his mind how long the fast-running spell would last, to which the system replied 20 minutes. Jun Changxiao said that was enough time, and after he dealt with those two guys, he would still be able to return to the sect using the spells. It wasn't long before both opponents were in front of each other in the arena. Wei Yil picked up a whip with a pointed end and said that howling would be dangerous, and asked if Jun Changxiao was ready. The man thought that since the Black Wind sect did not kill the protagonist and his students, he would do it. The city lord asked the protagonist if his spirits were ready. Jun Changxiao summoned his imaginary spirits and recited a technique. However, Wei Yil wasn't going to listen to the protagonist, said that he didn't care what it was all called. However, Jun Changxiao paid no heed to his opponent's rudeness, and the floor beneath him cracked. The guy picked up the very green sword and said it was called a flash of lightning. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and asked something of the man. Looking at the decapitated head, Jun Changxiao asked if he had thought about where his alliance would lead and how it would end. City Lord instantly wrote since he didn't expect something like this. Wei Yi was similarly taken aback. However, it was too late because Jun Changxiao was already standing behind him. The guy made a horizontal sweep of nothing and decapitated another elder. Looking at the blood spreading on his clothes, Jun Changxiao said something. He threatened that anyone who wished him dead should die. In the blink of an eye, both men lost their lives and Jun Changxiao turned to the city town. Jun Changxiao swung his sword again to get rid of the blood on the ball and said that he would have to bother his servants to clean the floor. Very soon, a golden tail appeared in the hands of the protagonist, which indicated payment. Jun Changxiao easily grabbed it and thanked him for the reward. The guy squinted his eyes as he realized that he now had the assets of the Black Wind sect and a reward. The city lord saluted the protagonist and thanked him for destroying all who the Black Wind that had been causing trouble for years. At the same time, the system also congratulated the protagonist. Jun Changxiao said not to mention it because as a young man from this city, he was obligated to do so. The horoscope said that Jun Changxiao had just beaten 2 Spring Water Sect elders, so he was now their nemesis. However, the guy squinted and said that they wouldn't have let him go even if he didn't. Horoscope said that the Spring Water Sect was supported by the Holy Spring Sect, and she would not reason with them about what was right or wrong. Jun Changxiao waved goodbye in his hand and said that he was not afraid of anything. Immediately afterward, the protagonist's face darkened and said that if they dared to provoke him again, he would kill them too. Immediately afterward, a dark mercenary appeared beside the city lord and said that, judging by his swiftness in the footsteps of everyone who Black Wind had most likely really been destroyed by him. The city lord realized that in order not to give away his power, he had made up a story about spirits. The man laughed and wondered, did Jun Changxiao really think that he, as a 3-year-old child, would believe this story? He then asked the mercenary if his skin really looked as soft as a child's. However, City squinted his eyes because he realized that it was surprising that Jun Changxiao knew such an incredible technique, and perhaps it was true that his sect had been established back in ancient times. The man understood that in any case, Jun Changxiao was a very determined guy, and it was better to be friends with him than hold a grudge against him. Jun Changxiao realized that right now, he had 50,000 taels in his hands, and not Jun Changxiao still didn't hear the accelerated footsteps towards him. The guy was glad to be out, all decided that he was going to the restaurant Starry Moon, and would eat and drink as much as he wanted. At the same moment, a certain girl crashed into the back of the protagonist and the guy wondered what it was. An annoyed Jun Changxiao turned around and asked who did it. However, the main character's hubris was instantly gone because he realized it was wrong. As it turned out, the main character was hit in the back by a little girl who started crying and sobbing in pain. Suddenly, the girl opened her eyes and asked if he was Jun Changxiao. Someone at the same moment, she heard the shouts of the men chasing her telling her to stop, and she was instantly covered in sweat. Apparently, a restaurant employee said that not only did she eat the dish without paying the bill, but she also insulted the chef. At the same moment, Jun Changxiao pulled his huge sword forward, and all the pursuers were instantly frightened. Jun Changxiao asked if so many big men were bullying a little girl and said that it was unacceptable. The man who was closest to the protagonist said that it really wasn't true, and they had gone too far. Jun Changxiao was surprised that he had changed his attitude so quickly. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and said that he was giving them 3 minutes. As soon as Jun Changxiao said that he was allowing them to escape from here as fast as possible, the entire group literally evaporated. After the girl calmed down, she thanked the protagonist for his help. Jun Changxiao said not to mention it since he is returning everyone, she should also go home. She-girl instantly embraced the oops from the protagonist and asked if she could join the cult. The girl said her name was Liu Wanxi and her nickname was Dudu. Liu Wanxi said that she was a good and obedient girl and asked for permission to join the sect. However, Jun Changxiao could not accept which request and apologized. Despite the girl's crying face, Jun Changxiao said that their sect was not recruiting disciples yet. At the same moment, a loud baby crying sounded outside. As a result, Jun Changxiao was literally covered in those tears. 2 lines of fountains were literally pouring from the girl's 2 eyes. And Jun Changxiao was only trying to calm her down and tell her not to cry. At the same time, passers-by also paid attention to this situation and called the main character a monster for bringing a little girl to tears. Jun Changxiao said that everything is fine and she can stop crying, the whole girl can go with him. Liu Wanxi instantly calmed down as if nothing had happened and with stars in her eyes said that they could go. The girl said she was hungry and asked if she could order a roasted gardenia from Starry Moon restaurant. Liu Wanxi said she also wanted ham on honey sauce, as well as many other dishes. Jun Changxiao asked if she was really a culinary expert and asked how she knew so many dishes. From such loud words, the girl was already ready to cry. However, Jun Changxiao stopped in time and agreed to the proposal. It wasn't long before the company was already in the Star Moon restaurant, and their food was brought to them. Okay, hero, seeing such a huge number of plates and different viands was very surprised. Savoring these dishes, Jun Changxiao was literally floating with happiness. However, Liu Wanxi could not stop the chef saying that mistakes were seen in many of his dishes. Jun Changxiao asked if she was complaining after eating everything. Liu Wanxi said that people who are very hungry will not care about the quality of the food. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that she sounded like she could cook well. However, right after that, the girl said that there is no one in this world better than her at cooking, and she has all the cooking skills, such as pan cooking, baking, braising, frying, grilling, and so on. Liu Wanxi said that if thieves like cultivators were divided into different stages, she would be a master. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and asked if she was really that good at cooking. The girl said that if Jun Changxiao didn't believe her, she could prove it when they returned to the sect and she would show her what real food was. Pretty soon, Jun Changxiao was sitting on a wagon with a girl, and a huge amount of different products ranging from appliances to literal cows. Dudu said that apart from pots and pans, seeds, poultry, and livestock were bought from the market. She also said that the sect needed to establish a vegetable garden, a fish pond, and an animal pen. Jun Changxiao said not to worry, he would do all these things for her. At the same time, one of the chickens ended up on the main character's head and released its excrement right on the top of his head. Pretty soon, Jun Changxiao was getting closer and closer to the sect. However, he could hardly move and exhaled heavily with each step. Dudu, who was beside him, could only encourage the protagonist, who carried a huge ball of all products as if it were a Sisyphean stone. Jun Changxiao shouted to his sect and asked them to help him. However, suddenly the guy squinted his eyes and wondered, who is this person? There was a certain man right at the entrance, and the cult followers were happily approaching the protagonist. Jun Changxiao happily handed over all the products to his disciples who could barely hold them in their hands, and asked what kind of person this was and if he had come to cause trouble. Completely handing over the ball of food that had literally entered the ground to the disciples who were trying to hold it, Jun Changxiao exhaled. Su Xiaomo said that his name was Ma Yangning, and he was a traveling swordsman. Su Xiaomo Said, he has been standing here for like 8 hours now. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that if he was standing here for 8 hours, he must have a strong will. However, Upon approaching the man, Jun Changxiao realized that he was literally asleep in such a pose. Jun Changxiao couldn't believe that this guy was sleeping standing up. Pretty soon, Dudu was in the kitchen. The former chef said the girl was very young and wondered if she really knew how to cook. As it turned out, the very former chef was Qinqiang Li, who claimed that no one could compare to the royal space noodles he cooked. Jun Changxiao said that he can only cook noodles, and is he really proud of that? Qinqiang Li said only to see how she wielded the knife. However, to everyone's surprise, the girl wielded the knife as if it were a part of her body and easily sliced carrots. After that, the girl started frying rice. Having brewed the broth, Dudu began to boil a rich soup. Pretty soon lunch was ready, and everyone was gathered in the dining room. All the portions looked like they came straight from the restaurant. All the disciples of the sect happily devoured this food, because they realized that it was incredibly delicious. Jun Changxiao and Qinqiang Li, who also happened to be the former incompetent chef, were literally devouring the food with their plates. Jun Changxiao said that it was much better than the chef of Star Moon restaurant, while Qinqiang Li was amazed that even ordinary noodles were so delicious. The girl said smugly that the chef of the Star Moon restaurant is an ordinary cook, but she is a senior chef. Dudu said that when she reaches a higher level, the food she cooks will also help improve their strength. Jun Changxiao wondered if it was really true eating a chicken leg. The girl asked if she would now be able to stay in the Iron Blood sects, but that Jun Changxiao naturally replied with an agree. Soon enough, night fell. The bright moon came out of the clouds and illuminated everything around. At the same time, Lu Qianqian was sitting on the roof of the sect building. The girl stared intently at the moon and realized that it was now a full moon again. It wasn't long before Jun Changxiao climbed onto the roof and said that it was getting late and asked how she was going to do the tasks tomorrow if she didn't sleep now. Sitting down beside the girl, Jun Changxiao asked if she was thinking about anything. The guy said that if she told him, she would definitely feel better. The girl said she wasn't worried about anything and just went out to admire the moon. Pretty soon the couple sat in awkward silence. Lu Chengqian looked at the main character and said that Liu Wanxi was an unusual girl. She said that as far as she knew, only the Ouyang family in Tianyu Imperial City could prepare food that increased strength. Jun Changxiao heard a name not known to her and realized that she looked quite extraordinary. However, Jun Changxiao said that Dudu's surname was not Ouyang, and Lu Qianqian parried that people's names could be changed. Jun Changxiao asked if she meant to reveal her identity directly, as she had done exactly as she did. The girl got up from her seat and said she had to go, avoiding the question. Jun Changxiao turned to the girl and told her to memorize something. The girl trembled and stopped after that. Jun Changxiao looked at the moon and said that she would always be the first disciple of the Iron Bone sect, and if she made enemies, she didn't need to do anything stupid. The girl listened to this quietly, looking down and thinking deeply. To everyone, Jun Changxiao said that he would help her. The girl, however, shuddered at such words. Blushing, the girl asked what it was talking about. Jun Changxiao exhaled and looked up again. The guy said the moon is very beautiful tonight. The next day there was some music coming from the sect. Jun Changxiao with a bright face sang along to the tune and smiled widely. The guy was still watching the beat and continued to sing along as he heard an incomprehensible squeak. At the same time, the door to the hall literally shattered into splinters and Jun Changxiao stepped back with a cry. A certain man put his foot on the remains from the door and looked at the protagonist with confidence. This man turned out to be a wandering thing who introduced himself that way. The man said he was here to challenge the leader of the Iron Bone sect. Jun Changxiao asked if he had just woken up and asked why he had kicked the gate. The man said that he was just a little irritable in the morning. Jun Changxiao looked at the man with this answer and couldn't help but go into a stupor. The sword appeared in the main character's hands, and he said it was an incredible coincidence. With a grim face, the guy said that he too is irritable in the morning and is ready to knock someone out right now. Ma Youngning took off his hat and said that he was just the man for the job. Jun Changxiao made a sweep of his sword and said that it was disgusting. Immediately afterward, Wanderer drew his sword and made a dash towards the protagonist. Both opponents clashed in fierce resistance, and the two punches collided, canceling each other out. Ma Yangning was very surprised at such a weak attack that didn't even belong to a martial arts disciple. The man said that he had challenged the leader of more than 30 sects, and among all of them, Jun Changxiao was the weakest. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that he had prepared 9 styles of sword-wielding for him. Immediately thereafter, the man launched his first punch. Ma Yangning instantly realized that he was struggling to fend off the main character's attacks, and had absolutely no time to counterattack. In the midst of one of the blows, the sword of the traveling swordsman was literally split in two, which even the man was surprised by. Jun Changxiao said that for him, the cultivation stage was of no importance, because the stage did not always show the real strength. Jun Changxiao looked down at the guy from above and told him to challenge him when she understood the main character's words. Ma Yangning looked at the protagonist with heavy breathlessness and called his name. To top it all off, Jun Changxiao turned to him and told him to fix that door and threatened another beating. Pretty soon, Jun Changxiao found himself in his own hall and sat down on his chair with irritation. The guy couldn't believe that he had fought a maniac so early in the morning. The system told the protagonist that he had accumulated 86 points of contribution value, and he could improve his health by making a purchase at the store. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that it was a good idea, and he would be a shopaholic today. Jun Changxiao bought all sorts of trinkets that he found interesting time after time. Jun Changxiao realized that he had finally obtained two useful things. In hand was a spell of increased physical strength. Jun Changxiao realized that right now, he could deliver a 900-kilogram strike, and with this spell, he would be 5 times more powerful. However, Jun Changxiao shifted his gaze to something even more unusual. In his hands was a golden pistol. Pointing the muzzle in the distance, Jun Changxiao said that times have changed. The system said that this gun was a prototype that had been adapted to this world. Jun Changxiao removed the clip from the gun I pulled out to check the components. Palma mentally noticed the change in the gun and realized that it wasn't firing bullets, but using crystal cores. Jun Changxiao understood that a crystal core was a ferocious beast energy core, and even the lowest quality one was worth around 1,000 taels. The boy squinted and remembered what he had seen on the sect's task list. There was an assignment to help the villagers to exterminate a firewolf in the Saipo Valley. The guy realized that due to the students' efforts in completing the tasks, the sect's contribution value points had already reached 7 decades and should buy equipment for them. Jun Changxiao asked why only the value contribution points could be used on the disciples and why he couldn't take a portion from there. The system said that the contribution points are earned by the disciples who feed the pigs and smash the manure. She pressed on the conscience of the protagonist, asking if he was going to say that they had to do it, because that would be clearly inhumane. After hearing so many arguments, Jun Changxiao said that he would just choose the best equipment he could find for them. It wasn't long before the top 4 students gathered in the Star Pavilion. Looking at the disciples who lined up, Jun Changxiao said that given their excellent work, he would like to reward each of them with a vial of energy elixir. Jun Changxiao said that after they accepted it, then their spiritual energy gathering speed would be twice as fast as usual. The guy held out the bottle and said it would last 12 hours. Qinqiang Li couldn't believe that such an elixir was in their sects because obviously, only everyone of the 5th level and above could have it. Jun Changxiao turned to the second disciple and said that it was all for the very disciples who were fulfilling the sect's missions and asked them to distribute the bottles. Suddenly, there was the voice of a guy who assured me he didn't want his share. This guy turned out to be Xiao Zuji, who claimed that he hadn't reached the cubature point opening stage and didn't know how to absorb spiritual energy, and asked him to give it to a disciple who needed it. She, as Jun Changxiao, said that he had always been just and he deserved it, and as for his cultivation base, he had other plans for it, for which the disciple thanked him. Jun Changxiao summoned Qinqiang Li and Su Xiaomo, and said that given their excellent work, then there was another reward for them, at the same time holding out 2 swords from the inventory. Jun Changxiao said that Qinqiang Li has seen the power of this cold sword, and he wants this sword to go to him, for which the guy thanked him. After that, Jun Changxiao turned to the 3rd disciple and said that he worked hard, but he was sly often enough, so he gave him a wooden sword. The guy was clearly not too happy about this news. Su Xiaomo thanked the protagonist, but asked what he could do to him. After that, the guy took a swing of his sword. Jun Changxiao tried to stop him, but it was too late. With a sharp movement of the ball, he sliced through a column in the hall. Lu Qiangqian said that the quality of this wooden sword was not inferior to that of a supreme sword, while everyone else looked at this sword with either awe or fear. Jun Changxiao pinched the bridge of his nose and said that they should be careful, and the protagonist has a 3-star assignment for Lu Qiangqian, Qinqiang Li, and Su Xiaomo. The guy said that outside the village there is a firewolf that is all this chaos in the area, and they will go along with the protagonist to destroy it. In short, the disciple was frightened as he realized that the firewolf was a ferocious beast and the strength compared to that of a martial arts disciple. However, Jun Changxiao said not to worry since he would be with them. However, Jun Changxiao stopped and told the 3rd disciple that as soon as they returned he would subdue the pillar, otherwise he would make his replacement stand up. It wasn't long before the company found themselves in the Wolf Valley. The firewolf lay calmly to himself and smoke rose up around him. Our company was trying to paint to this firewolf. Qinqiang Li showed Lu Qiangqian a gesture and she nodded in agreement. It wasn't long before all 3 disciples surrounded the firewolf. Meanwhile, Firewolf noticed their presence and twitched. Jun Changxiao suddenly shouted for them to go forward. Despite the guy encouraging them and telling them they could do it, all the students were scared. The firewolf immediately heard this sound and opened its eyes. After that, he shouted loudly and was already ready for battle. Su Xiaomo was indignant because Jun Changxiao said that he would just watch them and asked why he shouted. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that Dimension had already spotted them anyway, and he had just shouted to warn them. As if in some computer game, Qinqiang Li began to move closer to the firewolf, trying to strike it. However, due to his lack of experience, he twirled around as if he wasn't used to the control buttons. Jun Changxiao asked if he could move more flexibly. It wasn't long before Firewolf used his fireball skill. Jun Changxiao said to remember this because this skill had a recharge time. Pretty soon, all three disciples began to take turns attacking the firewolf. Jun Changxiao observed this and told them to learn to fight as a team. Jun Changxiao said that the three of them didn't have a tank or a healer. In the end, Lu Chengqian was at a low health level because of all these adventures. Jun Changxiao told Su Xiaomo that he couldn't use just normally, so instead to use his skills. However, immediately afterward, a huge rock flew towards the main character's tree and destroyed everything around him. As it turns out, it was pulled out of the ground by Lu Chengqian, who supposedly apologized for the accident. Jun Changxiao wrapped both arms and legs around the tree and said that he wouldn't say another word. After this moment's pause, with everyone standing in a stupor, the team, along with the fire lion, continued. The girl activated her quick steps and made a crisp and sharp strike at the firewolf. Watching this sight, Jun Changxiao realized that she really had extraordinary martial arts skills. He wondered if it was higher level or even divine level. However, the girl didn't read that at the end of her attack, the fire lion itself would attack her. Realizing that his comrade was about to be injured, Su Xiaomo picked up the very same wooden sword and swung. With a sharp movement of his hand, he struck the fire lion, preventing the fire from escaping. Yet clearly he didn't expect his skin to seem so tough. Immediately after that, the third disciple felt the breath of the fire lion behind his back as he prepared to attack. After that, a huge amount of fire was washing out of his mouth, while Su Xiaomo said not to chase him since he hadn't even scratched his skin. While Su Xiaomo was fleeing from the fire lion's attack above the lion himself, Qinqiang Li appeared ready to make a falling attack. As he landed on the ground, he landed a rather serious blow. However, the apprentice immediately realized from the tiger's angry expression that he hadn't hit it hard enough. Realizing that there was nothing he could do now, the guy immediately called out to Lu Changqian. The girl reactivated her steps and looked like she was floating in the air. He tried to charge another attack, but it failed trivially as the student's final blows decapitated him. After that, the wolf's head seemed to start bouncing off the ground. In the end, it was Jun Changxiao who caught that very head. After making a hole in his head and finding a crystalline core there, the guy said things were shaping up in his favor. Su Xiaomo corrected himself and asked if they had fought well, and Jun Changxiao said that their teamwork was not bad in the last part of the battle. The disciples said that it went well because Jun Changxiao gave them great weapons. Su Xiaomo said that this monster had been spewing fire at him the whole time, and he now felt like he was on fire. However, Jun Changxiao clenched his teeth because he realized that something was clearly wrong. Since even Jun Changxiao himself felt warmth and heard growling, it could be assumed that it wasn't over yet. Jun Changxiao realized that there was far more than one firewolf here. A lone leaf swayed quietly in the wind. However, despite all the tranquility, it wasn't long before he literally decayed and turned to ashes. The only reason for this was the presence of a firewolf, and an unusual one at that. The third student was very much frightened because this wolf was huge and had much more heat than a normal flame wolf. Everyone immediately realized that he was the king of the flame wolves. Lu Chengqian understood that this beast was a 7th level beast, and it was much stronger than the previous beast, and also said that its strength was equal to a 7th stage martial arts disciple. The girl took a hard look at this wolf and instantly realized that they were in serious trouble. Suddenly someone reached forward with their sword despite the unfolding hopelessness. One person turned out to be Qinqiang Li, who was telling the chapter to leave first. The guy had already tried to speak his dying words, however, he was stopped by Jun Changxiao himself. The guy told everyone to step aside and asked why they were so serious. Jun Changxiao said, "Remember this, because the main purpose of the Iron Bone sect is completely different." The guy said the goal is to not take death seriously and just fight what they don't like. Jun Changxiao pompously walked over to the beast and showed everyone the open holster. While Jun Changxiao smiled confidently, Qinqiang Li and Su Xiaomo looked at him with bewilderment. The guys looked at each other and questioned whether the main target was completely different, while Jun Changxiao shouted in annoyance and said that he had just changed that target. The guy picked up a gun and said he's been practicing his reloading skill hard lately. Jun Changxiao took out a clip from his pistol. Without thinking long, he picked up the very same crystal core and put it in the clip. The sheath happily absorbed this charge and began to fill with energy. Pretty soon, the clip panel showed that 7 shots could be fired with this crystal core. The guy put the clip back in the gun. Immediately afterward, he pointed his muzzle at the beast and bid it farewell. Immediately after that, Jun Changxiao pompously pulled the trigger. However, despite the guy acting out this scene after the press, nothing happened, and everyone froze in awkward silence. Immediately after that, Firewolf started to attack, and Jun Changxiao started to panic to avoid the attack, asking the system why the gun wasn't firing. The system said he didn't flip the bolt. The guy stopped abruptly. He clicked the bolt and was about to make his next attack. The guy crouched down, trying to aim, and said goodbye to him again. The guy pulled the trigger again. However, even this attempt yielded nothing, and the protagonist only had to avoid attack. Su Xiaomo asked why he was not using his weapon, observing this fight, while the other was saying that he said that he might be preparing an ultimatum skill. While Jun Changxiao was dodging another blow, said that she was not done talking, and the gun safety was still on, after which the guy sent her away. Jun Changxiao once again bounced back from all the blows, and said that if it didn't work again, he would just melt this gun down. Jun Changxiao quite soon found himself on the monster's back and said with a grim expression, he hoped that he had a good time. Jun Changxiao, with sweat on his face, once again said goodbye twice. Already this time when the guy pulled the trigger, there was a gunshot, and this shot was enough to not only break through the hard armor, but also finish off the monster. Jun Changxiao pulled the trigger, and a shot of incredible power erupted from the muzzle of the gun. The main character was literally knocked back to the other side from such a hard blow. Immediately afterward, the Flame Wolf King with a huge hole in the middle of his forehead spat on the ground dead. Qin Chengli couldn't believe that such a weapon killed a rank 7 beast with a single shot. Nevertheless, Su Xiaomo asked where their head was. Suddenly, and from the other side, the sturdy voice of the main character was heard, to which Lu Qianqian herself was surprised. Jun Changxiao was on the opposite side near the tree and told them to take the Wolf King's core and help him stand up. The guy was still holding the gun and said he simply couldn't move. With a gloomy expression, Jun Changxiao said that the recoil was too strong. Jun Changxiao said to be gentle with him, the whole he wouldn't be hurt if either of them were a healer. However, to everyone's surprise, Lu Qianqian bent the main character's joint with a sharp movement of her hand. Immediately afterward, he shouted loudly with such force that even the birds were frightened by the sound. It wasn't long before Jun Changxiao was in the sect, and was telling the system that it didn't work. The guy said the gun did more damage to himself than the monster, and he would be at the mercy of the enemy if he missed. However, the system said that Jun Changxiao was just an idiot, and was not strong enough to use this gun. The protagonist couldn't believe it. The whole recoil of this gun is equivalent to heavily ammo, and is she insulting him because of her own stupidity? The system told you that you know that the recoil will be strong because it's a modified gun with crystal kernel ammo, and the system has a thing that fits it perfectly. It wasn't long before Jun Changxiao found himself in the training room. The guy asked with embarrassment, "Did this body training room was worth 20 points? Jun Changxiao stood outside this room and said that it was just a tent. The system said it was worth its money and told me to trust it. There was some sort of chair in the middle and the system said to go in and try it." Jun Changxiao leaned over and asked if it was a massage chair. The guy sat down on the chair and the tent automatically closed. The guy asked if he would become stronger after his body was massaged. After the tent slammed shut, a sign appeared on it that said it would be closed for 2 hours. Jun Changxiao looked on with a smile and said that everything looked very soft and how this tent would give a massage. However, unexpectedly. But now the iron glands immediately encircled the body of the protagonist. Jun Changxiao immediately realized that he was tied up and had a bad feeling. Unexpectedly, right after that thought, he was struck by a part of the tent that seemed soft on his cheek. Jun Changxiao was still in a stupor and wondered what was going on. The system said that human flesh is like ordinary steel, and after 1,000 times hardening it can turn into excellent iron. And that's how this room works. Jun Changxiao reprimanded and said to let him out, but the system immediately apologized. She said that once the room starts its work, there is no stopping it for 2 hours. A slew of punches landed to the body of the protagonist right after that. Immediately afterward, a loud shouting and swearing was heard. After a while, all the shouting began to quiet down, and they seemed to only tone down. 2 hours later, the tent and surrendered mechanical sound and opened. Jun Changxiao instantly stuck out his hand, trying to escape from this prison. Being completely beaten and ungroomed, Jun Changxiao swore once more and walked out of the tent. The system had already started to say that when one was going to give someone a big responsibility from the heavens. However, Jun Changxiao was clearly not in a good mood and looked at the pear tree beside him. The guy told the system to shut down and hit the punching bag with anger. The contraption itself swayed slightly and began to calculate the force of the impact. As it turned out, the main character's strength had increased from 900 to 925. Jun Changxiao was greatly surprised because he remembered how yesterday's punch was 900 kilograms, but in just 2 hours of training, he had increased it by 20 kilograms. The guy asked, "Is this method really that effective?" Suddenly, Jun Changxiao heard some strange thumping sounds. The nearest tree swayed from those blows. As it turned out, the one who created these sounds was Xiaozuji, who was trying to advance in cultivation. Jun Changxiao approached the guy and asked why he was boxing here and if his cultivation on writing had failed. The guy wiped his face and said that he had comprehended the scriptures. But after days of absorbing energy, he still didn't have a single one. Tears flowed from Xiaozuji's eyes as he said that even the divine-level cultivation technique couldn't work on him, and it was fate that he wouldn't be able to become a cultivator. Jun Changxiao said not to be upset, and said with an incomprehensible smile that he had found a new cultivation method, and this method was being used to increase the strength of his body. With a tear-stained face and hope in his eyes, the guy turned around and asked if it was true. Immediately afterward, however, the guy freaked out and asked why the leader was so scarred. Jun Changxiao smiled evilly and said that he would soon find out why. After that, they came to the tent, and after a long 2 hours and no less frequent shouting, Xiaozuji came out of the car. Jun Changxiao bent down in front of the guy and asked how he was feeling. The guy asked if this was the punishment of his discouragement, and he is just a loser who can't even gather spiritual energy. However, Jun Changxiao said not to jump to conclusions and told him to feel his strength. Xiaozuji slowly got up and slept, and said that he couldn't even defeat a child in the first stage of opening points at the culture. The guy pushed down on his hands and tried to say something. However, he was instantly surprised at the ease with which he could lift his own body. The boy abruptly found himself back in the chair in the training room. With a smile on his face, the guy said that he had gotten stronger and asked when he would be able to cultivate. While Jun Changxiao was closing the room, he said that this training room would help him strengthen his body. However, after that he waved his hand and said that he had to spend 8 hours there every day and told him to keep practicing right now. The guy was indignant and asked why the man couldn't even let him catch his breath. Just as Jun Changxiao walked happily out of the room, loud shouts could be heard coming from the room. Jun Changxiao thought that he should buy another body training room. For the next few days, Jun Changxiao and Xiaozuji looked completely beaten up and just filled their bellies. Those passing by the training hall were extremely frightened by such strange sounds. Very soon, Xiaozuji went outside and tested the strength of his punch. As it turned out, the strength of his punch was already 300 units. Su Xiaomo was greatly surprised at the whole. Even if he didn't have spiritual energy, his strength was still higher than many people in the second stage of opening points at the cultivation. Qinqiang Li began to examine the guy's body and asked, was he really born so strong, to which the guy said that he was not at all, and the special training of the sect leaders and made him so strong. Still, the guy said the leader told him that the training did him a lot more good. After meditating for a long time, Jun Changxiao opened his eyes and said that he had finally done it. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes, and the system congratulated him for reaching the 12th stage of acupuncture point opening. The system said he was qualified for epic missions, after which it immediately gave him a mission about a sect competition. The system said that from the requirements, any of the students must be in the top 3, and if they don't register in time or all students lose in the first round, they will fail. She also said that the reward depends on how the competition ends. Jun Changxiao asked about the very last point. Jun Changxiao asked if the reward would be very great if all 3 of his disciples made it to the top 3. The system said that she admired his intelligence. However, she said that the punishment for failing an epic mission is very harsh. However, Jun Changxiao opened his eyes wide as he realized that if this happened, there was a chance that the bomb in his ring would explode, and then he would enter another world after death. However, Jun Changxiao immediately called out and said to meet at the training hall. Holding back his laughter, the hero said that in 10 days, everyone in the city will have a competition and asked if everyone knew about it. Qinqiang Li said that only advanced sects are involved. They usually send their best disciples, and most of them are at the apprentice level in martial arts. Once Qinqiang Li, who was all beaten up like everyone else, spoke, Jun Changxiao couldn't contain his laughter. Laughing heartily, Jun Changxiao said, just looking at them, he realizes that they have been practicing hard in the body training room, and they will take part in this competition. Jun Changxiao said that he wanted them all to take the top 3. Once the students heard this information, they couldn't help but be surprised. Lu Qingqian said that it would be difficult. Jun Changxiao said that this would really be a challenge for them and took out an accelerated training formation. The guy also said that all these 10 days he would train them harder than ever. After that, he released a formation with dual spiritual energy. After the flags finally formed a structure, Jun Changxiao continued. Jun Changxiao said that Lu Tiangqian would cultivate within this formation for the next 10 days. Then he told all the boys that they would spend their time half in the structure and half in the body workout room. The guy also said that he would put 2 more body training rooms. In the meantime, Xiaozuji could only look sadly at the energy in the guys. After that, Jun Changxiao turned to him specifically and said that the competition would be held in Liang City. Jun Changxiao said that it was his hometown where he was humiliated. The guy said that in addition to 3 food breaks a day for the next 10 days, he would be in a room with no body workout. However, the guy interrupted him and said he only needed 1 meal break a day, and the rest of the time he wouldn't leave the room to exercise his body. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and agreed with this. Watching the boy's grim face, he told him to get stronger and show others what he was capable of. Jun Changxiao said that even without a spiritual root or cultivation, he is still an unrivaled genius. It wasn't long before Jun Changxiao found himself at his brother's side at the entrance of the city. The administrator asked the name of their sect, to which Jun Changxiao replied that they were the Iron Blood sect. Then asked who would participate and their ages. Jun Changxiao named all the disciples and their respective ages. However, when the man heard the familiar name, he couldn't help but flinch in surprise. The administrator raised his head and asked if this was the straight-A loser who had been rejected by his own family. However, the protagonist's face instantly darkened, and the guy said that if he said one more word about it, he would immediately die. The administrator held out a sign and told Jun Changxiao to tell the students to get to the assembly hall on time, or else they would be disqualified. Jun Changxiao looked at the plaque in his hands and saw that Xiaozuji's plaque was signed as a direct descendant of the family. The guy said that his disciple didn't want to have this title at all. Jun Changxiao raised his finger and peeled off this inscription. The guy said that from now on, he was only a disciple of the Iron Blood sect. At the same time, there was a rather important negotiation going on in the Xiao family's mansion. Someone twirled the pebbles in their hands and said that there were unknown people who wanted to humiliate the Xiao family. The man remembered the rejected loser who entered the lowest level 9 network, signed up for the heart competition. The man said that he should have followed the advice of the Grand Elder and given this loser a cup of poisoned wine. The man believed that I would be a better fate for him if he could be reunited with his parents in hell. At the same time, Xiaozuji himself was being beaten by the training machine. Coming out of the tent, the guy could hardly move. Xiaozuji exhaled and tried to calm down. He made a sharp U-turn toward the pear tree. Then he made a swift kick, which was so strong that it tore his clothes. The boy exhaled and looked at his score. Jun Changxiao observed the guy who was returning to the tent and realized that he didn't have many talents, but he was working very hard. Jun Changxiao watched the guy and realized that Xiaozuji was getting stronger by the minute, and he would once again be able to spill out all his grudges on the day of the competition. The boy squinted his eyes and realized that if these old men of the family dared to play dirty with him, he would deal completely. Meanwhile, there was a distinctive sound in the Star Pavilion. The system informed the protagonist that Li Tianwen, carrying 20 barrels of water, had completed the sect's task. After that, the prices here of the sect's achievements reached their maximum, and the sect's formation rose to the 2nd level. Jun Changxiao looked at the newly arrived medicine tower and realized that it was finally more advanced. The guy looked at the materials and said he knew what it was, but he didn't understand what fire meant. The system said that the pill can only be made when he has fire, and there are different kinds of fire in the city, and he can also buy them from the store. Suddenly some idea hit the guy. The guy asked if he could combine 2 kinds of fire and create a fierce lotus. However, the system said that the host was mistaken, and this item was only available in another novel. She then said that one type of fire is on sale at the store right now, and she highly recommends it. She reported that a Linglong fire of superior quality costs only 50 points. Jun Changxiao said that he only had 62 points and asked if he could get a discount. However, unexpectedly the system alerted the protagonist that a side mission had been launched. The system told the protagonist to destroy the assassins who were targeting the protagonist. The guy obviously didn't expect something like that, and his face instantly darkened. The guy picked up his gun and took the safety off. Jun Changxiao began to look around and wondered where they might be hiding. Suddenly the boy heard some rustling. Jun Changxiao smiled and realized that the assassins were on the roof. Jun Changxiao raised his pistol with a sharp movement of his hand and confidently fired a shot at one of the assassins, instantly finishing him off. From such a strong impact, the man ended up on the roof, or rather his village. The other assassins instantly realized that Jun Changxiao was able to detect them. Realizing that there's nothing else they can do, they're down in front of the protagonist. One of the attackers picked up throwing knives and told the protagonist to head for hell. However, before the man could speak, his head was destroyed by the main character's shot, which clearly frightened the third assassin. Jun Changxiao said that the shot was too loud so he didn't hear it. The guy then pointed his muzzle at the remaining attacker and asked him to tell him what his partner was saying. Realizing that the same fate awaited him, assassin couldn't help but cry and panic. Qin Changli walked into the room and was surprised. However, no sooner had he finished speaking than he saw Jun Changxiao drive the assassin almost to hysterics. Jun Changxiao said that even if he did not say who sent him, he would find out himself. And when Jun Changxiao suggested that it was the Spring Water sect, the assassin tensed up. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes as he realized that if he was starting to worry, he was right. He realized that it was not surprising that the Spring Water sect had never done anything because they were busy hiring assassins. Jun Changxiao gloomed and thought that when the sect competition was over, he should deal with them. Jun Changxiao said to seal his spiritual energy due to warm him. After that, the system notified the end of the task, and Jun Changxiao realized that the points were just in time. The guy realized that recently his training had led to a very good result, because otherwise those 2 shots had gone off. Jun Changxiao now understood what he had to do. The system said that Jun Changxiao had spent 50 contribution value points and bought a superior quality fire. Jun Changxiao realized it was finally time to make pills and heated up the cauldron. The guy realized that he had to make some healing pills to keep his students in shape. With tired eyes and a purposeful gaze, Jun Changxiao worried about his disciples. It wasn't long before night fell on the city. Jun Changxiao opened the tent and said that he was especially worried about him specifically. Jun Changxiao walked up to the guy who was dozing and said that he was thinking about how to make him stronger, handed him a pill. It turned out that it was a primary muscle strengthening pill. 10 days later, Jun Changxiao found himself at the gates of the city. The protagonist was also followed by all of his students. The formidable company walked down the street with serious faces. The others were speculating about what was going on here as they saw the famous face of the loser. Some suggested that he would be a stepping stone for his opponent. Someone suggested that he had probably developed a hobby of getting jeered at by others. However, suddenly on the third, the student found himself in front of the faces of all 2 guys and asked with an expressionless face, how dare they slander him. Immediately afterward, he slapped them and told them they had asked for it. Everyone else was shocked at this guy's tremendous speed. Jun Changxiao called the third disciple a good boy. The gawkers thought that with such speed, he must be the best disciple of his sect. Some have speculated that he is Qin Changli, who has long been considered the genius of the city. A certain man said that Qin Changli was fast and strong, and should not be underestimated if they met in a fight. His friend said he's a genius too and he's not afraid of him. After that, the guy was right in front of the protagonist's company and made his presence known. The guy was very happy to see his longtime acquaintance, Xiao Zuji, and said that he was now the inner disciple of the great elder of the Silent Valley, and he had heard from him as soon as he returned. This person turned out to be the Xiao family heir, Xiao Ling. The guy said that Silent Valley was a level 6 sect. Unlike their level 9 sect, it was much better. The guy said that he was once again convinced that their family had made a huge mistake in raising him using all the resources. Jun Changxiao was just watching the confrontation while eating a watermelon. The man said he was the future of the family, and he should thank him for helping him reach the first stage of opening points as a culture. Su Xiaomo was about to burst out in rage. However, Jun Changxiao stopped him and told him to observe. Xiao Zuji looked at his opponent and called out his name. The guy said that the fact that he is his older brother will never change. Xiaolingi abruptly realized that he couldn't even free himself from his former brother's grip. After that, Xiao Zuji lowered him to his knees. Even though Xiaolingi was looking at the guy with immense anger in his eyes, he didn't change his expression in the slightest. Xiao Zuiji said that even without a spiritual root or cultivation base, he would always be his shadow. Jun Changxiao approved of his disciples' actions. Pretty soon the competition began. The herald asked everyone to go to their seats and take the seats watching. At the same time, there was already a certain man in the arena. Among the crowd, Xiao Zuoji was also swept in, with everyone looking at him and condemning him for appearing here. The great elder was the same person, because he said that he shouldn't even be alive, because he would only dishonor the family. After that, the man looked at the head of the Iron Blood sect and wondered if he was the person and the one he relied on. However, Jun Changxiao showed a gesture to Heer not to hold a grudge against his disciple, otherwise he would shoot him. However, the man clearly didn't understand what the gesture meant. Xiao Huang thought that this sign signified that there was something wrong with his head, and no wonder he took this loser to him. The herald said that 200 people are participating in this competition to help the contestants avoid meeting their comrades and their A sect, and divided them into 4 groups. Very soon, the first match of the first round began, with Tianqi from the Iron Blood sect opposing Sang Kai from the Red Gate sect. Tianqi was very much surprised that his opponent was so big and large. After that, a certain man approached the protagonist and said that today was a good day for the Red Gate sect. The man said that the opponent was at the 12th stage of acupuncture, but he wouldn't mind fighting his disciple, so the protagonist shouldn't worry. The boy thanked Elder Liu. After that, the referee started the fight. At the same moment as the man spoke about the start of the fight, Tianqi made a sharp lunge forward and struck his opponent. It hit with such force that the man ended up on the other side of the arena and crashed into the stone. The man beside the protagonist instantly opened his mouth, because he had not expected such an outcome. Tianqi immediately became worried because he couldn't hold his strength, because he couldn't believe that he was so weak, and the head was telling them not to give their best. Afterward, the man said that Jun Changxiao must have trained him a lot, to which the guy said that he was just lucky. Jun Changxiao told them to show what they could do. The 32nd match was with a 3rd student. Suddenly, Wei Yixi gave up the matter of not Qinqiang Li moving so fast in the city gate. The 20th match was against the 2nd student. The 32nd match was against the beautiful Lu Qianqian. Watching the whole incident, the man beside the protagonist couldn't believe that they had defeated their opponents in a second, while Jun Changxiao said that they didn't seem to know how to help their opponents play decently. While the match was going on, many people thought that the Iron Blood sect disciples were strong, and they beat their opponents too fast, so their matches were boring. However, his friends said that they were just having fun. Xiao Zuji entered the arena. His opponent thought that he was too lucky today, because he did not think that he would fight with the $1 million genius. Immediately after the fight started, his opponent lunged at him with great speed, and said that he would make him feel what it was like to be convinced right away. However, even after the guy threw his punch, Xiao Zuji didn't move a millimeter. The man said to stop playing tough because he must have shattered his shoulder. The guy said that compared to the hits he got in the training room, they were just too easy. The opponent couldn't believe this was happening and asked what kind of body workout room it was. Immediately afterward, Xiao Zuji struck a small blow with his fist, and his opponent's body ended up on the other side of the arena. The man clattered down the nearby steps with all his might and barely managed to slow his flight. As it turned out, from such a simple blow, the man's arm was dislocated and he involuntarily screamed. Everyone watching was left in deep shock. The referee declared the match won. The system said that 5 students had qualified for the 2nd round, and the epic task was 10% complete, and the guy received 20 contribution value points. Jun Changxiao understood that since the contribution value points were based on completion, it wasn't that difficult to complete it. However, the protagonist's biggest problem is Xiao Huang. The guy realized that once Zuiji defeated his opponent, something changed. The guy noticed that the man had become even angrier, and Jun Changxiao should take precautionary measures. Afterward, the protagonist's friend asked why you're here playing with a toy instead of watching the competition. The man said that even though Tianqi had defeated his disciple, however, he should recognize him because he was great. The man noticed how the disciple hadn't even used spiritual energy yet. The opponent of the 4th student asked why he did not resist. At the same time, the protagonist's friend realized that each punch of a disciple from this sect weighed about 75 kilograms, and since Tianqi was calmly taking all these punches, he couldn't help but wonder how he was doing it without the help of spiritual energy. After that, Tianqi threw his punch, but his opponent was able to dodge it. The man said that apparently he would have to break down his defenses with his own fighting skills. The man activated a spectacular palm strike and a huge amount of energy concentrated in his hands. The man pointed those hands toward his opponent and shouted loudly. With such a move, he was able to jump high and a huge amount of energy formed arcs. Tianqi calmly dodged all of these, however. He couldn't do anything. Suddenly, the guy turned his head as he noticed something unusual. Tianqi asked his opponent here plans to break his defense, and with a single hand movement, he grabbed him. With a grim face, the one said he didn't stand a chance and broke his arm. The referee declared the 4th student to have won. After the 2nd round of trials, the system said that all 5 students had passed on, causing the fulfillment of the epic task to increase by another 10%, for which he received 20 contribution value points. The man who was sitting beside the protagonist said that he was indeed a capable teacher, because even Xiao Zuji was able to strengthen his own body. Jun Changxiao said that he was after all a genius, and even without a spiritual root, ordinary people wouldn't be able to compare to him. Jun Changxiao realized that this was most likely bad news for the Xiao family. At the same time, the head of the Spring Wind sect only clenched his fingers and trembled. The man realized that the underdog had most likely trained his body, but any human body has its limit, and he was just lucky to win the first 2 rounds. The man smiled and reckoned that he couldn't defeat the opponent this time with his strong body. The 6th match of the 3rd round was between Xiaozuji and Haizu. Haizu surrounded his finger with mysterious energy and looked at his opponent cheekily. The guy said that it was very surprising that he had made it to the 3rd round, and asked if his body could resist his purple flame. Haizu said that fire cultivators were the natural enemies of martial artists, and the one wanted to see his opponent fall into hell. Jun Changxiao pulled out a telescope for himself and wondered if he was the rich kid that he had chased away. The friend asked if it was another toy of the protagonist and called him a child. Jun Changxiao said that it was not a toy and was extremely useful. The system described this sight as a sight with a magnification function capable of recognizing targets at a distance and introducing accurate shooting at long range. Haizu said that even if he was the genius he was 5 years ago, he was no longer the perpetually losing loser. A huge sphere of energy headed towards his opponent with a distinctive sound. Haizu told his opponent to turn into ashes, however, he did not even flinch. With a sharp movement of her hand, the guy instantly extinguished that fire. Haizu couldn't believe it or opened his eyes and mouth wide. Xiaozuji said that Jun Changxiao had said a lot of things that he couldn't understand. The guy was saying that if Xiaozuji were to punch fast enough to create negative air pressure vacuum and something else, he would be invincible. Haizu couldn't believe what had happened. Energy concentrated in his hands and he focused. The man summoned many fireballs and told him to defend himself against them. The guy bent over a little and prepared for another blow. After that, he started doing his series of punches as if it were air. However, what this series of blows did was that not only did it destroy the fireballs with the power of wind, it also knocked the enemy out of their calm state. Xiaozuji said he beat him back then when he bullied others in the past. The guy said that even now that he has lost everything, he still has his fists. The guy swapped upwards and was about to make another strike. Even Haizu's begging Haizu, who asked him to stop, couldn't do anything about it. After that, a loud scream was heard and Jun Changxiao closed his eyes. The guy realized that this was a very cruel fight, and he couldn't watch it anymore. Jun Changxiao understood that Xiaozuji would definitely win. The guy remembered how Lu Qianqian had participated in the first 2 rounds, and realized that she had definitely become a martial arts disciple then. Jun Changxiao realized that she had immediately thrown her opponent off the stage with her spiritual energy. Guy felt an inferiority complex, because he realized that even though he was the head of the sect, he was much weaker than his disciple, and this thought made him shiver. The guy realized that he couldn't let that happen, and said that he would work hard on his cultivation. The protagonist smiled and realized that the better his students were, the more pressure he felt. The guy looked at the fighting students and realized that their opponents would only get stronger as the next rounds passed, and they should put all their efforts and pressure on the protagonist. The system notified the protagonist that 5 disciples had entered the 5th round, and he once again received 20 points of contribution value. At the same time, the others were whispering because they realized that the 5th round was coming to an end. But not a single Iron Blood sect disciple had been eliminated, and they had no idea of their true strength. That one suggested that it might be their opponents, and they were simply not strong enough. One wondered why everyone who was level 9 had so many strong disciples. A certain mysterious man smiled and said to enjoy his triumph. The head of the Spring Wind sect was smiling, because even though an underdog and had made it to the 5th round, however, he would be defeated by a true genius in the family. The 7th match of the 5th round has begun, where Xiaolingyi will face Xiaozuji. The man understood that Xiaolingyi had cultivated in the Silent Valley for months, and he had become stronger than anyone else. Xiaolingyi only looked at what was happening with disdain. The others understood that Xiaolingyi was good, but he didn't seem as good as Xiaozuji, and many were happy to see such a hero ascend in the shadows. When Xiaolingyi heard these words, he instantly blinked. The guy swore that he would defeat him in front of everyone, and then they would all know that he was the one in charge. Xiaozuji bluntly told his opponent that he wouldn't be able to defeat him. However, the latter said with disdain that he still hadn't discovered the A culture points, and he was already a martial arts disciple. The guy asked who he was to despise a man. Xiao Huang understood that Xiaolingyi's mood had soured, and he couldn't overcome the feeling in him that he had been living in the shadows for many years. However, once he was destroyed, everything would change. The guy instantly used the palm strike of the 1,000-armed Bodhisattva. A huge amount of energy was directed towards the guy. However, the guy didn't even lift a finger. Suddenly, the ground beneath the opponent cracked, and Xiaozuji said that he had already told him this. Such a powerful strike, even though it hit Xiaozuji entirely, couldn't even scratch him, let alone seriously damage him. Xiaozuji said that he had already mentioned that he would not be able to defeat him. After such a serious blow, all that happened to Xiaozuji, it was just a disheveled garment and no scratch. People didn't realize if anyone in this sect could take this blow and remain unharmed. Others said to pay attention to the fact that not only was he unhurt, but he didn't even take a step back. Xiaolingyi said that he knew he had a strong body, but he didn't expect it to be strong enough to withstand a blow weighing a ton and 250 kilograms. However, the guy was not discouraged, and said that if one punch didn't work, he would punch twice, and if two punches didn't work either, he would punch as many times as he needed to take him down. After that, he struck again and there was a small explosion. Xiaozuji raised his hand to protect his own face, and all that happened to him was that the clothes on his sleeve also got torn. The opponent realized the guy wasn't even moving. He looked at the guy's legs and thought about how to get him to move. He went behind his back and told him that if he didn't want to move, he would make him. He swung at the guy from behind and told him to die standing still. After such a powerful impact, it couldn't help but crack, and large puffs of dust rose upwards, smelling the scent of victory. Xiaolingyi laughed and said that he didn't expect him to be able to dodge his attack. After that, he once again concentrated the energy in his hands and used the same technique. As Xiaozuji took a defensive stance, Xiaolingyi only laughed and said that he still had some fighting spirit left. However, despite his joyful expression, he realized that things were far from rosy. Unexpectedly, Xiaozuji's eyes opened wide. Xiaolingyi said, making him just a punching bag. However, what no one expected is that the guy would guess that the strength of his rule and palm is 150 kilograms heavier than the left. However, the guy did not understand why it happened because he remembered that he was left-handed. Xiaolingyi questioned what nonsense he was talking about and prepared to attack once more. The powerful blow was directed toward the opponent, who fully embraced it. He noticed how his left arm wasn't flexible enough in combat, and it was most likely because he had practiced too much. The guy threw another punch. However, this time the seller turned slightly away from him. After that, Xiaozuji successfully threw a punch that his opponent dodged. Xiaolingyi was barely able to slow down his flight and cursed. However, in the same second, Xiaozuji was in front of his opponent's face. With a sharp arm movement, he broke his opponent's arm. Xiaolingyi barely managed to stop and looked in the direction from where the punch was coming from. Immediately after that, he launched another combination of strikes, each of which Xiaozuji easily deflected. Xiao Huang didn't understand how this was possible because he realized that Xiaozuji had only reached the speed of the Buddha palm strike due to his physical training. At some point, Xiaozuji struck back at his opponent, and already this strike had hit. Immediately afterward, his opponent declined on the other side of the arena. With a heavy breath, Xiaolingyi said that he was just a loser refusing to accept reality. He didn't realize that his cultivation base was gone, and his life was ruined, and even his family had abandoned him. However, he still didn't understand how he couldn't compare to him even in his current state. The guy bowed to the winner and asked why he was still such an invincible genius. In the end, Xiaolingyi admitted that he had lost after all, which clearly displeased the elder. Xiaozuji looked at the elder and asked if he was his greatest creation. Xiao Huang literally cried and said that he was gushing. However, at the same moment, his body instantly reacted to the blow and dodged. Jun Changxiao asked with a smile, wondering if someone had given him permission to stand up and told them to sit back down. Jun Changxiao looked at the scope and said that he would shoot him in the head next time. After that, the battles continued, but they were nowhere near as interesting. Xinqiang Li faced off against another sect disciple in a duel. However, after an intense battle, she was still able to defeat her opponent. The referee announced that the first match of the final 8 was won by Xinqiang Li. The protagonist's friend said that he remembered that 2 months ago, Xinqiang Li was only at the 10th stage of opening his daughter as a culture, and asked how he was able to put a first-stage martial arts disciple so quickly. However, the man suddenly noticed Jun Changxiao sweating and questioned why this was so. It turned out that Jun Changxiao was literally jealous of his disciples, as he realized that even Xinqiang Li was stronger than him, and now he was the 3rd strongest in the sect. They were perplexed, and wondered if talented people could achieve anything they wanted. Jun Changxiao Yi mentally asked the system if there were any tools for this. After all, he needed them urgently. The system said that he would get what he wanted when he completed this epic task. After that, the matches continued, and in the end, the final 8 finalists included all of the main character's students. In the end, Tianqi was opposed by Xiaozuji. Absolutely everyone was excited for this battle. The 2 boys huddled together across from each other. Tianqi and Xiaozuji looked at each other with smiles. The guys started exchanging their blows, and after a while they were back in their seats. All the spectators were extremely enthusiastic from such a battle. Both boys tried their best. One blow after another, they got together and decided to settle it with an argument. As it turns out, they were just playing rock, paper, scissors, and Tianqi showed the scissors while Xiao Zuiji stone. Tianqi was greatly surprised since the guy had said he would show the paper. However, Xiao Zuiji laughed and said that he had outplayed and destroyed him, so victory was his. The spectators and the referee observing this state of mind both stunned. The entire grandstand started sending these contestants asking, "Do I really think you think they are stupid, and they want to end the match with a game of rock, paper, scissors?" Jun Changxiao sighed and said that they were acting like chumps, and their acting was a total suck, and he would need to take some lessons to teach them. The system informed the protagonist that the final 4 students had reached the finals, and the requirements, the tasks were completed. Jun Changxiao at the same time looked at the completed task and chanted. Jun Changxiao realized that if he added up the rewards from the previous rounds, he now had over 300 contribution value points. The unexpected system said that the host had exceeded the epic task and awarded him a seal opening spell and a certain amount of experience. At the same time, a huge amount of energy gathered around the protagonist. Pretty soon, this energy formed a kind of experience that went straight to the protagonist. At the same time, everyone around him was also incredibly surprised by this burst of energy. Jun Changxiao struggled to breathe because he realized that this was an incredible burden on him. Then on his face, the guy said he couldn't believe the system gave him so much experience. The system then congratulated him for reaching the 5th stage of martial arts disciple. Jun Changxiao was happy that he was once again the best in the sect. At the same time, the protagonist's friend asked if you really enjoyed watching his students win in battle since he even made a breakthrough. At the same time, the judge coughed and decided to ask the finalist a question. He asked if they were going to play rock, paper, scissors to decide who would be the winner. However, the 3rd student said that they would not do this because it would make the competition less interesting. He then looked at the 2nd student and said that they had decided to do something different. Immediately afterward, they all concentrated the energy in their feet. As it turns out, they were trying to escape the arena at top speed. The first one came out of the apprentice ring. She said that she left the stage first, so she is ranked 4th. Qin Qiangli said that she did well and said that he was ranked 3rd then. Su Xiaomo said that in this case he ranked 2nd and said that Xiao Zuoji was too slow. It is for this reason that he should be the champion. The guy literally cried, however he thanked his fellow soldiers. At the same time, the spectators who had been silently watching this competition only walked out of the arena dejectedly. At the same time, Jun Changxiao laughed and said that he would ask Dudu to give them a feast to celebrate their victory. Jun Changxiao said that they were even able to obtain a supreme skill book and 10 spiritual stones, each worth 10,000 silver. However, the disciples asked something else. Qinqiang Li asked if they should really go back to their all in such a shabby state. At the same time, Lu Qiangqian, unable to tolerate the red ribbon, just ripped it in half. Jun Changxiao said that they looked great and said not to doubt his taste. The guy then asked why don't they go out and celebrate with the 13 students. Qinqiang Li was greatly surprised and asked which 13 martial arts disciples we were talking about. Jun Changxiao said that they had been following them since they left the city and must be very tired. The guy asked if they were from the Spring Water sect or the Xiao family. With a nonchalant face, Jun Changxiao thanked them for becoming punching bags after his breakthrough. It wasn't long before the tree began to shake and the assassins emerged from there. Jun Changxiao lightly put down most of them with a slight movement of his hand. After a short while, Jun Changxiao walked over to the remaining bandits, who were already starting to be afraid of the guy. Constantly, one of the assassins in the pair noticed something unusual. On his chest was a clearly recognizable badge. Su Xiaomo abruptly raised his hand, to which even Jun Changxiao was surprised. The guy revealed that all the remaining assassins had managed to take the poison so they wouldn't be able to get the information. Jun Changxiao asked if they were kamikaze assassins at the same time as the other assassins, and made sharp payments forward trying to wound the protagonist, and did not rush to the body of the protagonist, even realizing that with such power, they could not do anything important. Jun Changxiao asked what kind of assassins went on a mission with identity tokens. The guy realized that he probably wouldn't get their boss's name from them. I made murals and movements with my fingers. He said he would give him a message using their lives. Immediately afterward, the decapitated and cut bodies went down. Jun Changxiao realized that right now, he was at the 5th stage disciple would be in their arts, and martial arts disciples of the 1st and 2nd stage were simply too weak for him, since he hadn't even received a side quest. Still in his thoughts, Jun Changxiao realized that the system forced him to defeat the strong, and remembered the names of all those who wanted to go against him. At the same time, in another part of the forest, a fierce bolt of lightning descended on a tree, breaking it into pieces. It was a rainy night, and no one even suspected anything out of the ordinary. Suddenly, however, a certain man appeared out of the tree, fuming as lightning struck the tree. What's even weirder is that he didn't scream, just laughed. The guy asked if he was chopping wood in this weather, and didn't he know that trees conduct lightning, as if he had taken over this body and was addressing the original owner. Nevertheless, he said that today was his lucky day, leading finally reincarnated after his soul had been imprisoned for several thousand years. With hatred unleashed upon the world, he said that he thought that one was his soulmate. However, she had set him up in front of the sutra and the great mystery, and he would set something up with her after recovering his cultivation base. Suddenly, the mystery man's head began to throb, and he questioned what these memories were. Suddenly, he realized that it was the woman who had ascended to heaven and become the faith for the mortal whom, known and revered by all. However, the guy realized that he was Lord Ye and the best among the 10 martial arts gods, and with the sutra in the great secret, he would once again become a martial arts god in a few decades. Suddenly, the guy noticed that the rain had stopped. He laughed loudly, for he realized that even heaven was on his side. He extended his finger upwards and said that he would destroy a certain empress. However, an unknown object was suddenly falling from the sky, which the guy obviously didn't pay attention to. He kept saying that the Great Mystery Sutra was a perfect cultivation technique. From this point on, Ye Xingcheng would subjugate the entire world. The guy already wanted to say that if Sky did not agree with this decision, he would make him obey, as a game ball flew to his face with incredible speed. Suddenly, one of the students told the protagonist that the soccer ball hit someone, to what the guy could not believe, because who can be in such a wilderness? After that, the guys approached the unfortunate victim, and Jun Changxiao said that he had just made an accidental strike, and it hit him. They thought that he was just incredibly unlucky. Su Xiaomo asked if they could just leave him here and pretend that nothing happened. However, Jun Changxiao said that he should learn to be kind. Jun Changxiao took him by the scruff of his neck and said that if they met someone who had fainted for no reason, then they should take him to All Who and help him so. The disciple asked if Jun Changxiao had forgotten about how they sent him to Who, to which Jun Changxiao said that he should be more savvy. At the same time, the guy put his foot on the ball, and the system reported that it was a lucky soccer ball and was the ball that players from Argentina once beat Brazil in the final. The guy introduced himself as Ye Xincheng. He realized that he had once been the god was in their art who ruled the entire continent. However, someone had surreptitiously weaponized him, and now he was sitting in some hall wiping blood from his nose. The guy wondered what he was doing, because it looked like someone had helped him. Ye Xincheng understood that he had to be. And from here, he needed to find a good place with rich spiritual energy to cultivate. However, at the same moment as a shout was heard for Jun Changxiao to be more attentive, the ball once again landed directly on the guy's head again, rendering him unconscious. The guy introduced himself again. Ye Xincheng, he remembered wanting to become a martial arts god who would rule the entire continent, but someone hit him with a concealed weapon. Spent. Suddenly he realized that he had heard those words somewhere before. The guy realized that he had to find a good place with rich spiritual energy to cultivate, and got up from his seat. Yet he still wasn't left with a feeling of déjà vu. And at the same moment when the guy was trying to open his door, Jun Changxiao joyfully walked into the room, and with a smile on his face asked if he had woken up again, hitting the guy. Unable to say a word, Ye Xincheng could only curse in his mind. Jun Changxiao looked at the guy's face, which looked clearly not in a good way, and whose mouth was visible foam, and asked why he was standing outside the door at that time. Because Jun Changxiao had no desire to hit him. The guy once again introduced himself as Ye Xincheng. However, this time he had a clear desire to kill him. Jun Changxiao said with a smile on his face that he snuck into their soccer field and was accidentally knocked down by a soccer ball. He also said that after a few days of them leaving, he finally woke up. The guy said that his name was Jun Changjiao, and he was now the head of the Iron Bone sect. Ye Xincheng said that the sect name is complete garbage and they're all who are most likely a piece of trash. With an annoyed expression on his face, Jun Changxiao said that it looked like he had seen the world and asked where the guy was from. With a haughty face, Ye Xincheng told him to remember that he was not to be trifled with. Ye Xincheng got close to the protagonist's face and told him not to mess with him and started threatening him. At the same moment, however, a soccer ball flew into his head again, and a distant voice apologized once more for hitting the guy again. Jun Changxiao looked at the guys in a stupor, and wondered if he had blocked the ball with his face again, because he realized that they needed a goalkeeper like him. Su Xiaomo asked the protagonist to pass him the ball, while Ye Xincheng was unconscious again. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and realized that no matter how young he looked, he was too advanced and intelligent, and wondered, did he encounter another genius again? The guy reintroduced himself as Ye Xincheng when Jun Changxiao told him to stop repeating himself. Jun Changxiao asked. He had already decided since the guy could get many bonuses if he joined their sect. However, Ye Shincheng asked why he needed to do this since their sect was a total lame sect. Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and asked what made him so arrogant and surrendered to the question of whether he was a martial arts god, since Jun Changxiao would give him 3 seconds to think about his proposal, or he would decide for him. The guy asked the protagonist if he was threatening him. With a grim look on his face and a smile on his face, the former Vogue said that no one could ever do that. However, not long after being beaten, the guy said that he had thought about it, and realized that joining him would not be the worst choice. Jun Changxiao questioned if he was sure he wanted to join them voluntarily. The guy was screaming, and then that he would do anything for iron bone sex while tied to a chair and had a whole line lined up behind him, ready to hit a ball at the guy. The bound Ye Shincheng asked the protagonist if he could find one, while the disciples sighed in frustration as they realized that the precision punching training had ended too quickly. Ye Shincheng decided to let the protagonist go for now, because after he mastered the great secret Sura, he would simply kill him. Jun Changxiao at the same time primly signed the paper and said that he was now his 102nd disciple. The guy handed him the scripture and said that it was their technique for cultivation, and asked him to learn it and remember that it must not be shown to anyone else. It wasn't long before night fell on the city, and Ye Shincheng found himself in the dormitory. He put the uniform and the writing on the floor with anger at them. Placing his feet in lotus posture, he wondered just how good a 9th-level sect cultivation technique could be, and to him, it was simply trash. He realized that he could look at her if he checked his cultivation process, found an excuse to bother him. However, as soon as he picked up the book and started reading, he was literally stunned. He couldn't believe that he was holding a divine-level cultivation technique for body enhancement. However, at the same moment, a pillow from another student flew into his face and told him to shut up because they had practice tomorrow. Immersed in deep thought of some sort, the man pondered what defines an assassin. He understood its ability to kill a target in a couple moves without leaving a mark. While Jun Changxiao was looking at the notes on the bamboo paper behind him, the same assassin landed behind him. He realized that the victim would only sense his presence when he hit the target. The man smiled as he realized that this was how a professional killer worked. Still smiling and taking a swing at the protagonist, the man said that death had come for him. However, unexpectedly, the man's sword literally bounced off the bamboo paper with a distinctive metallic sound. The man wondered why this bamboo scroll was so strong since he had used all his power, but it was still intact. As it turns out, the system gave the protagonist a scroll on how to become a good sect leader, and this scroll is so valuable that the bamboo scroll was reinforced. However, the man did not know about it, and realized that a failed mission means immediate escape. Jun Changxiao pretended not to notice him the whole time. He said that he was really good, because he had only sensed his presence after he got close to him. Squinting, however, he sank into his thoughts. The guy said that he wouldn't be able to leave the Iron Bone sect so easily while the man tried to run out of it. And so it was indeed, for the man encountered an invisible barrier during his flight. The man was greatly surprised and wondered if it was real. Realize his mission doomed to fail. The man fell down without even resisting. Jun Changxiao said that he wouldn't be able to use the same trick twice, while the system notified that the entire sect was surrounded by a dome, or rather a small protective structure, because it was strong enough to withstand the attack of a Grand Master of Martial Arts. While the failed assassin was trying to escape from the protagonist, Jun Changxiao said that he had a very unusual hairstyle. Unexpectedly, Jun Changxiao asked if he was number 47 by chance. The assassin smiled and said that he had underestimated the protagonist because he didn't think that he would recognize his codename. The man said that he seemed to have learned something secret about the Drizzling Tower, and Jun Changxiao probably knows how strong they are. However, Jun Changxiao squinted his eyes and repeated the name. After briefly thinking, Jun Changxiao said that this was the first time he had heard this, but the man resented this and asked how the man could know his codename without knowing about her. Jun Changxiao merely said that he had just guessed it, and the man literally cried at this, for he had tricked him. A martial arts student in the 4th stage who had completed 264 missions, and he would not let him do it again. Jun Changxiao thought very hard about the suggestion of hiring a professional like him. The guy realized that it must have cost the Springwater sect a lot, and it probably cost no less than 5,000. The man said that 5,000 couldn't even cover the cost, and they offered 10,000. Once Jun Changxiao heard this information, he only smiled while the man was covered in sweat. The guy took him by the scruff of the neck and said a guy like him shouldn't be doing that kind of work, and said, "Think about your future and career in his dungeon." The assassin literally cried as he realized that Jun Changxiao had prepared a trap for him. At the same time, a pleasant atmosphere brewed in the Springwater sect. A certain man was lifting an iron barbell, breathing heavily. He kept getting angry and realized that Jun Changxiao had killed 2 of them, and why it was so hard for him to kill a third-rate sect leader. However, looking at the man's pathetic efforts, Wei Yixi said that Jun Changxiao had killed them with his own hands and asked if he still considered him a loser. The man said that this time, he had hired a professional drizzle tower assassin, and now Jun Changxiao would definitely die. The man said that the 4 of them had become disciples of the Holy Spring sect and left there to found all who spring water, and asked why they should hire others to take revenge. Wei Yishi said that after the assassin eliminated the main character, they would personally go to the Iron Blood sect. The man said he uses every drop of his students' blood to mourn their brothers. Suddenly another man approached the company and asked if he would disturb them. The sect head was very surprised to see such a significant face. He asked what brought him here. Qin Haran had come here to apologize for not raising his subordinates well, and asked for forgiveness. The man also said that there could not be a bloodthirsty leader like Jun Changxiao in the Union Pack sect. The man said that he would make him satisfied even if he had to mutilate or kill him, and it was also necessary to fix the situation of the Holy Spring sect. A certain man leaned on the handle and said that it was Qin Haran, the leader of the 100 Sect Alliance. The man was Jun Changxiao, who said that he had no time to visit him personally after becoming the sect leader, and he didn't think he would catch him during such a memorable moment. Everyone except the alliance leader was startled, as they didn't expect something like this to happen. The man said he had sensed his presence some time ago, and asked what had brought him here, and what he would witness. Jun Changxiao said with a bright smile that he would also witness the demise of the Spring Water sect. The elder said that Jun Changxiao had killed their brothers and even took down their signboard, instantly getting angry. However, Wei Yixi stopped him. The sect leader told him to calm down since his presence here meant that the killer had failed, and the killer was a disciple, would be a stage 4 art. Jun Changxiao took the plaque and said that he was generous enough to let them return the sect's card again as a coffin board. The guy said that it was his personal dislike between him and the Spring Water sect, and he hoped that Qin Haran would not interfere. Jun Changxiao said that he didn't want the staking sect alliance to break up so soon. Qin Haran asked, does Jun Changxiao want to destroy everyone's spring water in front of him, and said that he was too bold. Jun Changxiao made a throwing sign and told him to make a wise choice. Both men immediately realized that only high-stage disciples could possess such strength and speed. It was Qin Haran who grabbed the wooden tablet. He defended the 2 men and said that according to his observations, he was only a 5th-stage disciple, but his strength was equal to a 7th-stage disciple. The alliance leader said that he did not know where he got such strength from. However, he was a 9th-stage martial arts disciple. The man said apologizing to them would be his only option today. And just as suddenly, a bullet appeared right in front of the man's face and was rapidly approaching him. A man at the last second and 2 was able to react and dodge the bullet. Qin Haran breathed heavily and asked if this was the reason why he dared to challenge a higher-level cultivator, and it wouldn't help him to defeat him. Suddenly, however, the man heard a shrill scream at his back. As it turns out, because he dodged that bullet, the bullet itself hit the elder, and Wei Yixi instantly began to tremble with fear. Jun Changxiao was still holding the gun, and said that the disciples were in their arts in the 9th stage, barely able to dodge the bullet. Qin Haran got angry and asked if he really wanted to destroy the Spring Water sect, and asked where he got so much anger from. Listening to the threats and censures of the alliance literature from the hands of the protagonist, slowly disappeared the very same gun. Jun Changxiao said that the Spring Water sect colluded with bandits and tried to kill his disciples, and after that they offered a reward to the drizzling tower for his head. He asked how he could stop just because of the alliance leader's words, and asked why he wouldn't ask all those of the Holy Spring to do nothing after he destroyed the Spring Water sect. The sect head said that he had sent disciples after the people from the Holy Spring sect to restore justice, and said that there would be nothing left of the Iron Blood sect. Literally crying, Wei Yixi said that he would be waiting for him in hell, and he along with his brothers would be waiting for him. Jun Changxiao said that the rule of the 101 Iron Blood sect stated that they would fight any offender, and said that such a hopeless barking dog didn't deserve his bullet. Immediately afterward, the main character's mood soured and he sent him to burn in hell. Realizing what would happen in the next second, the alliance leader's clothes were instantly destroyed from his muscles. The man said not to do that and took a swing at the protagonist. After that, the sword of the protagonist and the fist of the alliance leader clashed together. Jun Changxiao swung his sword and was greatly surprised. The guy smiled and said that he couldn't believe that he wanted to stop the sword system with his bare hands. As a result, this sword easily pierced not only the arm of the alliance leader, but also the head of the sect leader. Qin Haran couldn't believe that his skill couldn't stop the main character. Jun Changxiao chopped off the head of his assailant and released his sword from his grip. Jun Changxiao said that the Spring Water sect was expelled from the alliance, and the same would happen to the Iron Bone sect. Jun Changxiao said that fools like them didn't deserve to be his allies. Qin Haran quite soon found himself beside the city lord, and said that a scoundrel like him could not be spared. The city lord said he would take care of the main character if he did something heartless. However, Jun Changxiao merely killed the sect villains and dispersed the disciples. However, the Springwater sect raises many more questions. The city lord was furious when he said that the sect colluded with the bandits to kill innocents, and they were even allowing the people from the Drizzle Tower to infiltrate the city. The city lord asked the alliance leader how dare they do such a thing. The man said that he knew how he wanted to curry favor with the Holy Spring sect, and the man instantly stumbled on flat ground. The city lord stood up and said not to forget who is really in charge of this city. Looking at the alliance leader prostrate on the floor, the man said that if someone dared to harm the people in the city with sneaky methods, then they shouldn't be blamed for what would happen next. At the same time, the Iron Blood sect was playing incomprehensible music. Some speakers were saying the dancers' slogans, and amazingly, all the disciples of the sect could not shake off the feeling that they were obliged to do so. Jun Changxiao blushed, not realizing that this was another shameful purchase from the system. However, Jun Changxiao realized that this thing could allow him to take control in a situation if necessary. Jun Changxiao wondered what would happen if the enemy suddenly danced. However, after remembering something so shameful, he couldn't help but slap his face. At the same time, all the disciples thought that Jun Changxiao had completely lost his mind. Ye Xinchen wondered why he couldn't make his body stop dancing after all he is a martial arts god, and how he would dominate the world after such a thing. Pretty soon the morning exercise was over. Although everyone else endured this moment harmlessly enough for Ye Xincheng, it was a blow to his pride. He tearfully told me to leave him alone because now he had no dignity. Just like that, Jun Changxiao suddenly descended in front of the guy. Even though the guy couldn't see his face, however, he could see the power. Covering his face, Ye Xinchen could only cluck irritably. It wasn't long before Jun Changxiao, along with Ye Xincheng, were on the training ground. Jun Changxiao said that he was envious of people like him. Jun Changxiao said that unlike him, all he wanted was to be handsome. Hearing this goal, Ye Xincheng couldn't help but laugh. Jun Changxiao that he was probably thinking every second about getting the hell out of here. However, Jun Changxiao also realized that the guy had mixed feelings about the sect. Jun Changxiao understood that the guy had already been to the gym to train his body, so he knows how beneficial it is for his development, and even the awkward morning exercise makes him feel invigorated. Jun Changxiao said that when he left this place, he would lose many cultivation resources beyond his imagination. As soon as Jun Changxiao saw the proper reaction, the guy realized that he was right, and the guy really wanted revenge. Jun Changxiao said that he didn't know his whole story. However, he said that if he cultivated here, he wouldn't find any problems. Jun Changxiao said that only he could decide how his story would end. Ye Xincheng asked if Jun Changxiao could help him become a martial arts god. Jun Changxiao laughed and said that becoming a martial arts god would only be the beginning, because he believed that there were higher realms and he would help him reach a higher level. Ye Xinchen stretched and said that the writing in the training room proved that he wasn't lying, and for now, he agreed to be his disciple. However, the guy realized that the main character's spiritual roots were mediocre, and even if his cultivation methods were amazing, he wouldn't make further progress. Jun Changxiao said that he had a keen eye and Jun Changxiao had already guessed that he was special. However, the guy smiled and said that he couldn't even imagine what secret cultivation methods he had. At the same time, it was obvious that Jun Changxiao recalled the stove. In the meantime, at the entrance, someone was trying hard to hammer the tins into the door. The guy was struggling to fix something, but it seemed like he was breaking more than fixing. After a short time, the guy was breathing heavily and rejoicing because after all, he was finally done. After finishing his work, the guy decided that now it was time to continue his adventures and said goodbye to everyone running toward the exit. However, unexpectedly, the sound of a sword bouncing was heard. The guy struggled to break free and realized that only one step separated him. However, the ball of the protagonist did not keep him waiting, because the guy immediately threw it in the direction of the fugitive. Eventually, this ball bounced off the frame and hit the student right in his face. As soon as the guy felt that kick, he mentally said goodbye to his adventures. Jun Changxiao slowly walked over to the guy and told him to wait before he ran away because the door had been repaired abnormally. Jun Changxiao walked past the guy and told him that if he didn't fix it before he returned, he would remain their goalkeeper forever. It wasn't long before Jun Changxiao found himself in the common market. Jun Changxiao looked around and realized that they called this city the City of Medicines for nothing. After all, It only took him an hour to get more than 20 medicinal pills, and he even got 2 energy circulation pills. However, the guy looked up and said it still wasn't enough and he needed to look in other places as well. At some point, Jun Changxiao noticed the pharmacy and said that it looked pretty impressive. What I didn't realize was that he was quite close to this family, and although not particularly good glory, he became famous for beating up the elder and the boy. One of the receptionists smilingly greeted the protagonist and asked how he could help. Jun Changxiao said that he had a special offer for them. However, he would only talk to the administrator. The administrator was surprised and asked what the main character's name was. Jun Changxiao called out his name and affiliation. The boy instantly remembered the name and asked if he was the one who had beaten up the elder and the child. After that, he got angry and told another employee to call people here as soon as possible. Jun Changxiao smiled and realized that it looked like there was no revenge here, and he knew that dealing with them was not easy. It wasn't long, however, before his face literally went dumbfounded. Jun Changxiao wondered if the receptionist was just asking him to serve tea. The man said that this is indeed true, and their family always treats customers well. Quite soon, it was the elder of that family who approached the protagonist with a wide smile and said hello to him. Jun Changxiao said that he was afraid that because of their conflict, the man ignored the request. Nevertheless, the man could only laugh and said that it would naturally not be like this. The elder still remembered the news of Jun Changxiao destroying the Spring Water sect and defeating a 9th-stage martial arts disciple by himself, and realized that no one wanted to anger the martial master. The man said that their fight was only to help them get to know each other better. The man sat down beside the protagonist and asked him what he had to offer him. The guy held out a sheet of medicine names. The guy said that regardless of how many of the listed components he has, he wants to take absolutely everything. After looking at the leaf, the man said it would cost him a fortune, and the leaves of the diva flower are the most expensive, and they have over 200 units in stock. Jun Changxiao understood that the leaves of the diva flower were the main raw material for making energy pills, meaning that he would be able to make more than 200 pills. The man said that they would cost him 100,000 even with the discount. However, Jun Changxiao laughed and said that money was not a problem and he had enough money after robbing the bandit. Getting old, she said he'd arrange delivery right away. He then asked the guy if he knew anything about alchemy. Said he knew the littlest and had with him and the people he did. The guy held out a healing pill and asked if he wanted to purchase it. The man said that even a very respectful healing pill is the most common, and selling it would not make much profit. Suddenly, however, the man noticed something amiss, got up from his seat and punched the receptionist in the chest. Poor victim vomited blood. Jun Changxiao pulled his hand out of the guy's ribcage, already seemed to have one foot in the grave. The elders instantly rose from their seat and said that their family had not disrespected him in any way, and asked why he had chosen to kill their employee. However, suddenly the receptionist said he was perfectly fine, and even the man couldn't believe what was happening. The elder was certain that his ribcage had been crushed and began to guess something. The elder touched the administrator's chest. He was sure that the blow had crushed his chest, but it had suddenly healed, and it wasn't the magic healing pill. After that, the man instantly asked the protagonist how many of these pills he had, and said that they would buy absolutely all of them. Jun Changxiao said that such periods are very expensive, 10,000. The elder said that if they demanded 10,000 for one pill, there was no problem. He immediately told his administrator to go to the bank and withdraw 100,000. Jun Changxiao can't believe it because he wanted to say that he was giving away 10,000 for just one bottle. The guy understood not to be rich very nicely. The man held out the ring and said that they had placed the herbs he requested in the interdimensional ring. The elder said that this ring would be his gift to honor their first collaboration. Jun Changxiao held out a medicine bottle and said that there were 10 medicinal pills in here and they would cover his expenses. The elder thanked the protagonist and said that they would gladly buy back all his pills at a good price. The system congratulated the protagonist on the fact that he was able to earn 1,000 silver and immediately 10,000, for which it gave him 20 and 5,000 treasure points respectively. Jun Changxiao was still greatly surprised when the system provided him with a hidden reward, a liquid that improved abilities, and even 2 pieces. Jun Changxiao said that he had something to do and said goodbye to the receptionist. The administrator said they could sell the pills for 30,000 silver each and congratulated him on making a terrific deal. However, the elder told the boy to think twice. The man realized that belonging to advertisements and auction prices for such magic pills would start at 50. The elder said that Jun Changxiao is a terrific money tree, and Jun Changxiao, who was running at one time, sneered sharply. He wondered if 2 bottles of ability fluid had just made him sneeze, and asked the system if he had gotten those medications he needed. At the same time, Jun Changxiao found himself in the forest thicket and instantly began to absorb energy. In the middle of the lawn, the main character literally saw with his naked eye this incredible surge of spiritual energy. Jun Changxiao surrendered to the question of whether this was exactly how it felt to have a supreme spiritual root. The guy said that since the spiritual energy was causing such a violent reaction, he would absorb it completely. The system said that Jun Changxiao had successfully broken through to the 6th and 7th stage of martial arts disciple. The guy was literally floating in the air and realized that a higher spiritual root was awesome, and with it he felt like the master of the world. I didn't realize that there was a reason why Qinchang Li was progressing much faster than everyone else. Jun Changxiao realized that this made him wait with even more trepidation to obtain the highest spiritual level. The guy thought that he had become a genius like Qinchang Li. Suddenly, he remembered that the female disciple was even more talented and wondered how you want the spiritual root of her. It wasn't long before Jun Changxiao was in his sect and pressing the pill creation button. The guy sulked that the system didn't allow to create pills in batches, and it was unreasonable that his finger was about to cramp. However, the guy realized that in his past life, he had been single for 30 years, and otherwise his hand speed couldn't have been so fast. 2 hours later, Jun Changxiao had finally finished producing the pills. The guy realized that he had created too many pills at a time and his finger was already suffering from spasm. The guy reached out and said that he would distribute these pills tomorrow and his disciples would make progress in cultivation. The guy looked at the boiler and said that it was getting dark outside and he had been working too long. The guy thought he should look in the store and maybe he could buy something useful. Suddenly, however, his eyes focused on one commodity that he couldn't even believe existed. He instantly told the system that he had to get it. The system asked if he was sure or not, because it would cost him 100 points in contribution value. However, Jun Changxiao said that he wouldn't even think about it. The entire chance of such luck is 1,000. Immediately after that, a huge barrel appeared in the hands of the protagonist, and the system congratulated the guy. She said he purchased a modified sniper rifle. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that a real man should have a sniper rifle. Jun Changxiao took out his scope and attached it to his rifle. The guy took aim and said the modified sniper rifle is an amazing weapon. The system said it was a sniper rifle equipped with an 8x scope, and it was recommended to use the enhanced mode. The guy asked what the enhanced mode was and instantly said to turn it on. The system said that the host had activated the enhanced 8-fold sight mode and was charged 5 points of contribution value. Jun Changxiao didn't expect that this service wasn't free. However, before he could even finish speaking, he sensed something wrong. Jun Changxiao opened his eyes wide and felt incredible. He saw everything in the building and everything around him like it was all a blueprint. Jun Changxiao smiled and said, "This is not an improved mode. A is a cheat tool that makes everything around it transparent." Suddenly, the guy heard some voices saying that something strange was going on in the sect, and they had to be very careful to save the 47. The other man said that they had only 1 day left before the appointed time, and they had finally broken through the defense structure with the ancient weapon. Jun Changxiao instantly turned gloomy. Jun Changxiao ducked down and immediately started looking through his scope. The guy saw 2 men who were squatting and plotting their plan. Meanwhile, the 2 men speculated on how the sect had trapped him, and realized that since they were both here, they could easily kill the protagonist. The guy opened his eyes wide as he realized that this mode allowed him to eavesdrop and find targets. The guy squinted his eyes and said he understood that they wanted to take the client's money and be done with the case. However, they still came here after the client died and most likely the tower shouldn't exist in this world. The guy then pulled the trigger and a single shot was fired from the rifle. Such an incredible shot instantly destroyed all the nearby walls that were stirring. The assassins instantly realized they had been exposed. However, to their misfortune, this shot was so accurate that it immediately struck both heads of the criminals. Jun Changxiao realized that in the end, it was the latter who won the confrontation between the assassins and the sniper, and the extermination of evil must be finished. The protagonist's face darkened, and he realized that the tower had to disappear. After that, the system gave him 2 skills. Jun Changxiao asked if this was a martial arts skill of the sect, and since this was the case, his disciples should practice it as well. The guy understood that it was only average but martial arts. However, he would be curious as to how energy saving it could be a point. The guy smiled and said he needed to find someone to check things out tomorrow, and instantly remembered such a person. He took his weapon in his hands and asked if he really wanted to fight him on blades, because last time he defeated him only because his weapon was better than his opponent's weapon. The boy swung and said he was born to be a master of blades. However, no one expected that this very blade master would be so afraid of such a strong and fast attack. After a short time, the main character's hall suffered another explosion. Jun Changxiao wondered if some mysterious martial arts master had modified this skill after all. It wasn't just energy-saving A is practically zero consumption. However, in the midst of all these puffs of dust, one man raised his hand and addressed the protagonist. As it turned out, this man was the very same blade master who barely I was able to avoid all the attacks. Jun Changxiao looked at the guy and asked didn't he want to escape yesterday need to say something. That after seeing his great skill, he too wanted to master this great skill. The man said that after yesterday's meal, he had firmly decided to stay in the sect until the end of his days. Jun Changxiao was angry and asked if this was the real reason why he wanted to stay here. Jun Changxiao said that Dudu needed someone to help her wash dishes and appointed the guy as her assistant. The man said he was born to be a helper. Jun Changxiao couldn't believe such a change and said that the guy was too bold. Jun Changxiao put his hand on the guy's shoulder and said that this was exactly the talent they had been waiting for. 3 days later, there was a strange atmosphere in the city. There were flyers everywhere telling people that death was imminent. Pretty soon, a lot of people found themselves auctioning off healing pills. Meanwhile, there was noise and gum at the auction. Many were fumbling about the healing pills on display today, but many did not realize if there was really any good in there. Suddenly, someone noticed something strange and wondered if this was not the second son of the Song family. People felt sorry for him back then. He was only doing Xiaozuji's thing, however. When he was attacked by a beast in the wilderness, his body was paralyzed. People looked at this guy and realized that now this is a case where he won't be able to live normally, and he won't be able to die normally. And in 2 or 3 years, he would have become a very important big shot if it wasn't for this case. Someone gave him that very period protagonist. The overseer over the boy asked the elder what he was giving the second son of the Song family. Despite all the insults, the guy could only flinch. However, it wasn't long before the unbelievable happened. The man was able to lift his arm on his own. Both the overseer and everyone watching instantly shut up. It wasn't long before Da hand was back in its original position, and the overseer couldn't believe he could move his arm with just one pill. However, suddenly, a huge amount of energy gathered around the unfortunate man. The man opened his eyes wide, then astonishment. His whole body began to fill with energy again, and he couldn't help but laugh at such an amazing feeling. He instantly broke down his wheelchair and happily said he could finally move. Literally cried with happiness, and said his meridians were restored and so was his motivation. The warden couldn't believe it, and asked how this was possible. Those watching couldn't help but say it was a miracle. People realized that it was not just medicine A and to top it all off, an extra life. After that, the elder smiled and asked if everyone had seen the effects of this medicine, because this was a secret medicine effect he had made especially for martial arts disciples. After that, the auction finally started. The price of the pill has jumped to 60,000. However, it didn't stop there, and people bet more and more money on this pill. Nevertheless, regardless of the general excitement, there were 3 men in robes sitting on the bench. Qinqiang Li asked the protagonist didn't tell the protagonist that he made a huge profit selling each pill for 10,000. After that, the guy said not to reveal all their plans, and realistically its price could be even more than 100,000. Jun Changxiao literally held back his tears and realized that he had screwed up very badly. At the same time, the first pill was sold for a modest 100,000. The guy couldn't help but feel sad, and pretty soon found himself back in the cult building. The boy straddled the wood with helplessness. The guy could not believe that now every step he takes causes so much pain, because realizing that these people are sold for 100,000 silver, he could earn much more. Suddenly someone called 3 people in robes and asked the protagonist to go with him. Said he spotted them at an auction. The protagonist said that he came today to raise the sect rank to 8th, so he brought his disciples to the city, and as he noticed, an auction was quite successful. She blushed and said it was all thanks to the miracle drug for which there was so much demand. Unexpectedly, he rummaged through his pockets and held out a pile of papers to the protagonist. He asked the protagonist to take the 20,000 silver as compensation. The man said that he hoped Jun Changxiao would continue to sell pills to his family in the future, and they hoped for much urgent cooperation. Jun Changxiao said that he had made 10 good pills this time, and regarding the price he wanted to ask for 500,000. However, he was instantly interrupted. The elder smiled and said that she would give 1 million for it because after talking about today's auction, many people would come to see the next one, and then the bids would be much higher. The guy realized that it was really good because he only wanted to ask for 500,000. It wasn't long before Jun Changxiao and his second disciple were walking down the street. Qinqiang Li asked the protagonist if he really wanted to say that he had already made a deal with them, However, Qinqiang Li wondered whether Jun Changxiao was hiding his pain. Su Xiaomo and Qinqiang Li quite soon came to a certain place. The guy pointed out the certification of the sects before them. Jun Changxiao, Qinqiang Li, and Su Xiaomo only watched him drink his drink in silence. After he put his glass down, Jun Changxiao asked why they couldn't promote everyone who was up to the 8th level. The man said that they didn't meet all the requirements. Jun Changxiao asked, how could they not do it since for an 8th level sect, one only needs to have 5 martial arts disciples, and 4 of his disciples were at the martial arts disciple stage. Thus adding a protagonist would be enough. The administrator said that he had heard about the past tournament, and even though he knew they were martial arts students, but he couldn't register them without a reason. Jun Changxiao was starting to get angry, but still calmly asked how to prove it to him. The man said that first he should go to the village registration office in his sect, and find the village headman and the secretary of the village committee. Su Xiaomo said that if it was that simple, Uncle Wang would easily take care of it. Jun Changxiao said that he was too naive. The man continued his demands. After all, when the form is signed and approved by these people, the application certificate will be ready. After that, the man said to give it to the head of the city guard, who will bring the preliminary inspection and so on and so forth. Jun Changxiao was literally stunned by such a list, and said that he didn't expect this place to be even more of a mess than Earth. Meanwhile, the man still didn't stop. After that, Jun Changxiao smiled and asked, is there an easier way? However, the man spread his hands and said there was nothing he could do about it because it was all established procedure and no reductions or exceptions were allowed. However, unexpectedly, Jun Changxiao heard a voice from the passage saying that the Glory Iron Bone sect was so famous in the county that they could take special measures. As it turned out, standing outside the threshold was Elder Ma, whose arrival Jun Changxiao was extremely happy about. The man said with a smile on his face that he didn't expect to meet him again and asked what was wrong with his face. Jun Changxiao says he's just following the rules and said not to be too strict. Soaked. However, unexpectedly, he instantly stamped his approval for the sect's rank promotion. With a wide smile on his face, he said that his application for sect promotion to level 8 had been approved and asked him to take a picture later. As Jun Changxiao looked at everything happening in a stupor, the elder could only smile. However, Jun Changxiao was sure that he would be simply irresistible in the picture. The main character's disciple said that his charisma should be spread, and that was his requirement. Another said he should style his hair to show his ears. Eventually, on the count of 3, the main character was shot and done. The photo was far from perfect. Jun Changxiao tore up this piece of paper and said that Elder was very helpful today and he would definitely visit him to thank him. The system congratulated the protagonist on the sect's promotion to the 8th level and gave him 100 sect achievement value points. Jun Changxiao, literally with tears in his eyes, asked the system if it knew what he had gone through. At the same time, the sounds of furious training could be heard in the training room. The guy was trying his best to beat up a punching bag to increase his strength. Jun Changxiao walked over to the guy with a smile on his face and said that he had brought it as a gift. The guy tossed the guy a sack, and the guy looked at him in surprise. Inside the bag, there seemed to be a huge amount of nukes, the value of which was hard to imagine. Jun Changxiao said that he had given just over 1,700,000 for everything, and needed them for the next step he had prepared for the guy. The guy said that his punching power had now reached 4,600 kilograms, but his body had literally reached its limit. Jun Changxiao said that there are many ways for a warrior to improve his physical strength, such as weapons and equipment. The guy said that if his concentration peaked, that sniper rifle would be his. Jun Changxiao smiled and said to walk with him to the back of the hill and try out this weapon. Pretty soon they were on mountainous terrain. Xiao Zuiji looked through the scope, while Jun Changxiao said that range, firing speed, and wind speed all affected accuracy, and after removing the safety, he would be able to pull the trigger smoothly. Jun Changxiao told him to aim and shoot. The guy said yes, and without thinking long, he pulled the trigger. At the same moment, it created an explosion of a small area, and the earth around it instantly cracked. Jun Changxiao forgot to mention something and smiled. Jun Changxiao said that this rifle has a hell of a recoil. As a result of such a shot, a lot of trees that were just in the way were affected. Jun Changxiao said that he couldn't handle the recoil. Jun Changxiao said that his physical strength still left a lot to be desired. As it turned out, Xiao Zuji's body was on the opposite side and was extremely shabby. Jun Changxiao said that the physical strength could still be improved. The guy said he had a knack for shooting because he was able to hit the target even after being knocked back by the recoil. The guy, still breathing hard, said he wanted to be a sniper and was ready to go. The next day, a multitude of disciples were carrying a huge log at full speed. In the end, this log was blocked with her own body by Xiao Zuji, who didn't even move. After this exercise, the guy was only a few centimeters behind from his original position. The guy was literally trembling from this. However, he still kept on his feet. The guy squinted and told them to say it again. Jun Changxiao and Qin Qiangli couldn't help but think that he was being too hard on himself. Qin Qiangli said that Xiao Zuiji had always wanted to be strong, and to do so, he constantly had to prove his abilities, but he still needed to win over his fiancée. Jun Changxiao remembered that her name was Mu Rongxin and asked if she was strong. Qin Qiangli said that as far as he knew, Mu Rongxin was a descendant of the Murong family, which was one of the 4 big families in Tianhai County. He was sure that her family's strength was not lower than a 5th-level sect. Qin Qiangli said, even more importantly, this family had excellent spiritual roots and had been accepted as disciples by the 11th elder of the 2nd-level sect, Holy Father Baihe. Jun Changxiao blushed and was sure that his fate had already been terminated, and he could already smell that sweet smell of place, and no wonder he was suffering from guilt. Jun Changxiao realized that as master, he was afraid that it would be very difficult to control someone who had lost himself. At the same time, Xiao Zuji's face was full of determination. After another blow, the log literally split from the guy's body. No one could even believe it, and looked at the guy with perplexed eyes. Jun Changxiao looked at this guy and realized that a family that was inferior to a 5th-level sect and talented disciples were worthless against him. Jun Changxiao understood that it might be difficult, however, his disciple would definitely teach this family what repentance was. A few days later, Jun Changxiao was once again in the forest. Jun Changxiao put another core in the clip, and said that with it, the recoil would be much less than last time. The guy said the wind direction is from north to east, and its speed is about 3 meters per second. Marina said he determined the target's velocity and started the report before the shot was fired. The guy was still staring intently through the peephole. However, exactly at the last moment, he saw an unknown silhouette appear behind his victim. The guy was greatly surprised and wondered if this was the building. That same silhouette appeared near the entrance of the Iron Blood sect. Mu Rongxin wondered if this was the Iron Bone sect, and unlike the rumored ruined building, it looked completely different. The unsuspecting girl noticed something unusual. The silhouette of a guy we already knew appeared at the entrance, and the girl wondered if he had changed so much. Xiao Zuji asked the girl what she was doing here, and she only stared at the guy silently. Let's go back to 5 years ago. That's when Mu Rongxin came to the guy to dissolve their marriage. The rest of the crowd was cussing the guy out and telling him to get the hell out of there. The guy has still not lost that feeling of being a genius, but even then he was a blank slate. Nevertheless, the guy could easily accept it, because he could accept the knowledge from his own family. Xiao Zuji understood that the marriage was agreed between their parents, so they had no feelings for each other. But she humiliated his parents again and made them look bad again. Back to the present, though. A guy asks a girl what she wants and tells her that if she doesn't name it, he's going to shoot her. The former daughter-in-law said that she is one of the main ones in their family, and when their family comes to any sect around the city they are greeted by the elders. The woman immediately followed up by asking who was in charge and why wouldn't this man greet her. However, once she noticed that Xiao Zuoji was simply closing the door in front of her, she became even more angry. The guy said either she goes in, or he closes the door. The blushing girl shouted about how this was only a 9th-level sect. The girl wanted to already say that if he thought she was important, he should take the appropriate one, but was stunned by the sight of the sect. The girl looked up and couldn't help but let out a surprised exclamation. Xiao Zuoji said firstly, they are an 8th-level sect, and secondly, the sect head instructed their second brother to upgrade and expand the sect. Mu Rongxin said that it is useless to rebuild the sect, because no matter how luxurious it is, the disciples here are low level and they are very mediocre. Taken in, did she really think that disciples who had only cultivated for a few months were mediocre? Hearing such a time frame, the girl couldn't help but be surprised and realized that many people here were in the 10th stage of opening points. The woman looked at the guy and said he still hadn't recovered his medians. The girl said she didn't know at that point at his spiritual roots and regression cultivation, nor about the whole situation in his family. Mu Rongxin and said that she simply did not want to marry a stranger. So behind her grandfather's back, the marriage was dissolved. She said that in the past 5 years, everyone thinks that she is the reason why he lost his cultivation. The guy said it had been quite a while and said he wouldn't remember it because he had found his own way. Jun Changxiao calmly observed this situation while sipping his drink. They watched the couple as if they were spying, and Jun Changxiao didn't hesitate to make many comments, while Qin Qiangli said that he didn't think peeking and eavesdropping on them was a good idea. The girl handed him 10 pills that should help with the opening of the blocked meridians, and said that it was compensation for her impulsive actions in her youth. The guy asked if she had decided to feel sorry for him since she couldn't take those pills. However, at the same moment, a drink flew into the guy's head. Nevertheless, the guy did not change his decision and said that this way he could not regain his dignity, which he had already lost. A sign flew between Xiao Zuiji and Mu Rongxin telling Jun Changxiao to add his timelines. Xiao Zuiji said that things would change in 10 years. However, Jun Changxiao didn't agree to it, nor did he agree to it for 8 years. At one point, Xiao Zuiji got angry and asked the protagonist to stop throwing those signs. After that, the guy finally did take those pills. Xiao Zuiji said that he would enter the sect in 3 years and challenge him. The girl instantly blushed at such a strong statement from the guy. She turned and said she would wait for him. Xiao Zuiji silently looked at the girl's back. The guy squirmed as if to lie down and said that he had nothing to do with her and asked why he had to go all who in 3 years to humiliate her. However, Jun Changxiao didn't tell him to humiliate or dishonor her because he only needed to get out of the hole he had dug for himself. Jun Changxiao said that only by destroying the memories of his past self could he regain his confidence and self-respect. The guy looked at the protagonist like an idiot and didn't understand a word of what was being said. At the same time, there were many signs behind the protagonist's back that incited the guy. At one point, Qinqiang Li was forced to stop Xiao Zuiji because he wanted the protagonist, who at the same time only laughed and walked away. Being already in the building, Jun Changxiao asked the system what. She thought about analyzing the ingredients to find out. Jun Changxiao understood that with these pills, the disciples would be able to progress faster. And what is equally important to the protagonist is that the spiritual root problem may be the wife. The system said that Jun Changxiao had spent 50 contribution value points and obtained a special liquid. The guy said that he would first try to raise the spiritual root with strength, and then he would see what the problem really was. Xiao Zuiji looked at the bottle and asked if it was really only the elixir that would be able to restore his spiritual root. Jun Changxiao said that it was quite difficult to say definitively. However, it should definitely help. After that, Xiao Zuiji drank this elixir in a volley. The blushing guy said that he could smell the aroma of malt, and Jun Changxiao called him a connoisseur. Jun Changxiao said that it was just about time for him to wait. However, he noticed something unbelievable. Some black substance that looked like smoke started oozing out of Xiao Zuiji's body, and the guy was clearly screaming in pain. His body was literally covered with this vile creature. Jun Changxiao asked the system what this black smoke was since he had never heard of anything similar. The system said that Xiao Zuiji had been poisoned, so there was nothing surprising, and the elixir helps him get the poison out. After a while, some of that smoke came out of the guy's body while the other returned to its place. Jun Changxiao realized that he had only helped flush out some of the poison, and was able to open some meridians. The boy's face darkened, and he wondered if he had poisoned him too, because there were too many candidates. Jun Changxiao noticed that the poisonous gas was gradually disappearing and the detoxification was coming to an end. Unexpectedly, the guy said that he could feel spiritual energy again. After exhaling the very black gas, the guy decided to examine his body. Xiao Zuiji understood that he had stabilized his strength at the 4th opening stage, and he never thought that he would feel this feeling again. Afterward, he immediately knelt down and thanked the main character for giving him a second chance, and said he would never forget it. Jun Changxiao stopped the guy from making a kick to the floor and raised his elbows. Jun Changxiao said to stop because all he needs is just to help his sect become more powerful. The guy said that he didn't need to kneel before him at all, and told him to stand up and regain his cultivation. The boy, with tears in his eyes, unable to keep his emotions in check, agreed with his master. Jun Changxiao scratched his chin and said that there was something he couldn't understand from the system. The guy said that the guy's cultivation had been sealed and his spiritual roots had degraded, all because of some eye something. The eye was eventually eliminated, but why was he only able to recover to the 4th stage of dots? He didn't realize that even without paying that much attention, there was trivially no poison that would suppress both cultivation and spiritual roots in the city. Guy realized that even if it existed, it was unlikely that the poison would have an overwhelming effect even after it was removed. The protagonist's face darkened, and he realized something important. The guy assumed that Xiao Zuiji had been poisoned by at least several poisons. That liquid only destroys the part of the poison that is responsible for suppressing cultivation. The guy realized that the more he dug, the more confusing it all became, and his brain was trivializing it all. Then the guy asked the system if there was a way to improve his brain, to which the system told the protagonist that this was the first time it had heard of anything like this. The system once again reiterated that there was simply no medicine that could cure brain damage. Jun Changxiao cursed in his thoughts and realized that he would format it sooner or later. At the same time, Ye Xinchen was on the rooftop and wondered what else Lily's sect was. The guy remembered that when he was at the height of his strength, they were only level 5 sects. However, he was much more surprised by the main character's writing. as it held so many secrets that he had not even comprehended. He realized that if it weren't for the writing, he wouldn't have been able to reach the 7th stage of opening points so quickly. Finally making up his mind, Ye Xincheng came down from the roof and said that he had to practice a lot anyway to increase his motivation speed. It wasn't long before he landed near the front door. The guy said he was going to the wild animal territory tomorrow for training. Jun Changxiao said that ever since he started practicing hard, his cultivation level had increased significantly, and from now on, he needed to train his body and mind. The guy reiterated about how he even had his roof leaking, and he imagined himself to be a martial arts god. After that, Jun Changxiao told him to take Xiao Zuji with him. The guy said that he too needed to train to regain control of his spiritual energy, and the two of them would take care of each other just fine. Jun Changxiao looked at Ye Xincheng and surrendered to the question of whether he was the reincarnation of a potentially powerful cultivator. After that, he shifted his gaze to Xiao Zuji and realized that the genius in front of him was a genius who had lost his strength. Jun Changxiao realized that they would make a very interesting duo. The guy realized that he still had to leave for town to buy herbs, and on the way would see how the preparations for the second auction were going. Soon enough, the boy found himself in the city. Everyone on the streets was talking about the fact that the medicine had a divine effect, and that was not all, because the injuries were instantly restored. People whispered that several big families and sects were waiting for the auction to start, and they as small and poor families couldn't even hope to own something like this. For the protagonist, these conversations were like honey for their ears, and decided that if things continued like this, they wouldn't count the money until they had cramps. However, suddenly the guy realized that he once again felt like a fool who was just bringing in money because he had sold pills worth 100,000 silver for only 10. The guy scratched his head and said that he still needed to grow medicinal herbs as soon as possible, without wondering who would process them. It wasn't long before he was back at the drugstore. One of the receptionists shouted at the customer and wondered what kind of insolent old man he was. He beat the customer with a broom and told him to get out of here because there was no room for such a crook in their store. Jun Changxiao calmly approached the receptionist. Afterward, he asked what was going on here. The man explained that this old man had come to ask for a job, but as Splinter. The very man being beaten said he was a third-year medical student and wouldn't miss much. However, the administrator still beat this man up because he said that a third-grade medicine disciple was almost the same as a disciple was in their third-stage arts, and wondered how he could be so cocky. Jun Changxiao excitedly tried to stop the administrator and asked to be allowed to listen to him. The man said he was asking for it based on his skills, and he wanted 5,000 silver a month for his labor. Jun Changxiao realized that it was a bit more than usual. However, he still had no right to beat him for it. However, at the same moment, Jun Changxiao realized what was so strange, and the elephant in the room was the exorbitant demands of the job itself, which were reaching absurdity. Jun Changxiao asked the administrator for another broom, while the insolent beggar said that it would be nice if he gave him some more helpers since he had a few. However, he immediately changed his mind after the angry looks. The guys took a swing at the old man and told him that if he didn't want to be beaten up, he should shut up and get the hell out of there. With a grim face, Jun Changxiao asked if this was all he wanted since only a fool would choose him as his assistant. The man turned his head and said they were once again a bunch of uneducated fools. With tears in his eyes, the man was literally crying. Unexpectedly, he said that if it wasn't for him, this pile of entitlements would be ruined. The administrator asked what we were talking about since the family's herbs are of high quality. The old man said that these herbs are fine, however the one who oversees them is a complete cretin and called him out for being wasteful. The administrator said that all these herbs are handled by 7th and 8th grade herbalists who are much better than he is. The system said that the man, as it turned out, is not lying. Jun Changxiao said that he had been asked by curious people to tell more about the incident. Quite soon they found themselves near a medicinal herb. The administrator said this hardwood right looks great, and she is definitely better quality. The man said the leaves of the deciduous herb gather spiritual power around them, and strange energy oozed from his fingers. The man said that if they were touched with bare hands, the spiritual power would be destroyed, and the effectiveness of the medicine would be greatly reduced. The man used his aura to pick up the leaf and realized that every time he did this, his whole heart literally burst, and luckily, he could still recover the lost medical effects. After that, a small amount of aura flowed into the leaf. The system warned the protagonist that an unknown energy had been detected and he freaked out. The system said that the effect of this leafy herb was increased by 300%. However, the administrator was clearly unimpressed because he had only just restored the lost grass effect, and it was just words, and no one would believe him. Jun Changxiao instantly after this judgment said that the Iron Blood sect were willing to hire him for a much larger sum of money, and the monthly payment would be 10,000 silver, and on top of that, he accepted all the other conditions. The guy said that all he just said was that he would cultivate medicinal herbs for his sect. The old man was clearly surprised at such a huge figure and asked again if it was true. After that, he bowed to the protagonist and said that since he was sincere in his decision, he would go and pack his things and then move in with him. The system congratulated the protagonist for successfully summoning Wei Lao. Jun Changqiao was surprised that the man could summon hidden tasks, and realized that he had most likely found the treasure. Wei Lao opened the doors to his home, where he was greeted by a multitude of children who cheered his entire arrival. Jun Changxiao said that they looked like a happy family. About the Beilo. The old man said they were orphans he had adopted. The man said he knows it seems ridiculous in a world where only power matters, yet there are things someone has to do. Jun Changxiao smiled and said that you finally understood him why he was asking to leave work at any time, and he felt that hiring him was the right decision. The guy said he could bring these kids into his cult, and they had recently renovated the facility and would even be able to build them a yard to play in. As soon as the old man tried to refuse, Jun Changxiao said that recently he had too much extra money, so he would try to provide them with everything they needed. The old man said he was too worried about those kids and thanked him for that. Wei Lao said that he knows that many sects prefer to raise orphans to be loyal and cannon fodder, and he wants these orphans to secure their own future. Jun Changxiao said not to worry about it as he would not make them join the sect. However, Jun Changxiao would like to make a bet with him that in the future, they would want to join there themselves. The guy said that when they returned to the cult, he would send some disciples here to pick up the kids. Pretty soon, a huge column of boxes was coming down the street. The old man said that grass seeds and seedlings should be carried carefully, and told him to remember that under no circumstances should they be damaged. Under the feet of the protagonist literally burst heavy, and he asked if it was saying that seeds and seedlings would be crushed. Jun Changjiao asked if it was that important, to which the old man said that if it wasn't for his age, he could help him. Jun Changxiao said that the old man was overdoing his pretense because he had been resting for 3 hours after their trip to the market for herbs. It wasn't long before the team found themselves on the side of a mountain. Su Xiaomo put the Aesop down and turned to the main character. He said that he joined this sect for the sake of cultivation, not to plow the land. The guy said they'd be hunted down like horses in slave labor here until they were old. But the old man did not tolerate such expressions, and said that it was only 10 acres in the heath, and they should get to work as soon as possible, because the best time for growing grass would soon be over. After that, all the guys started cultivating the earth.